If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Operation Light Brigade number 64. As the video played out before me, the pieces of the puzzle started clicking into place like a twisted game of Tetris. It was becoming painfully clear, our supposed mastermind wasn't some cunning puppeteer pulling strings from the shadows. No, it was more like a demonic force, capable of slipping into human vessels and manipulating them like marionettes. Combine that with my other findings, and you've got yourself a demonic entity capable of possessing and empowering humans with a knack for scheming and a grudge against solar technology, hence the relentless pursuit of Bruce Gordon and his research. But it wasn't just the tech that irked this entity, it was the light itself, the byproduct of solar energy. Only one character perfectly fits the bill. In the midst of my contemplation, the penguin's impatience cut through the haze. "Well, what's the verdict?" he demanded, his tone laced with irritation. "Spill it, kid," he pressed, tapping his foot impatiently. I sighed, meeting the mob boss's gaze head-on. "I finally cracked the case," I began, my voice trailing off as I struggled to find the right words. "Our culprit is none other than God's Spirit of Wrath," I announced, shaking my head in disbelief. "The Spirit of Wrath? Sounds like a bad title for a wrestler," Penguin quipped, arching an eyebrow skeptically. "Who exactly is this supposed Spirit of Wrath?" he inquired. I shook my head, a sense of gravity settling over me. "This isn't a cliched title or a metaphor, Mr. Cobblepot. We're talking about Eclipso, once the literal embodiment of divine fury," I explained, but the penguin's expression remained unmoved. It was no surprise that the penguin wasn't buying into the whole God's wrath spiel. I mean, if divine fury really existed, wouldn't it have taken him out ages ago? And what's with a cosmic powerhouse like that bothering with drug lords? But hey, I knew the penguin had crossed paths with something similar in the past, so I just had to jog his memory a bit. "Ever heard of the Spectre?" I asked casually, watching as the gears turned in Penguin's head at the mention of the name. "Well, Eclipso's like his meaner, nastier older brother with a serious vendetta and a world domination complex," I elaborated, and that seemed to do the trick. Doubt vanished from Penguin's face faster than Batman disappeared into the night. Penguin mused, his expression turning contemplative. "And does this Eclipso have any Achilles heels?" he inquired after a beat. I shot him a sidelong glance, eyebrows raised. I knew Penguin was no stranger to holding a grudge but hunting down the literal Spirit of Wrath to settle a score? That was a whole new level of vindictive. I was about to suggest he leave the superhero stuff to the capes, but then it hit me like a ton of bat bricks. Could the heroes handle Eclipso? Sure, on the comic book pages, they usually do. But this was no comic book world, it's a chaotic carnival of consequences, and I've been flipping switches and pulling levers without a care in the world like a butterfly on crack. Who knows what kind of hurricanes I've stirred up already? I racked my brain, desperately trying to come up with a plan. But let's face it, I was like a goldfish trying to solve a Rubik's Cube out of my league. Sure, I had some upgrades courtesy of the system, but facing off against Eclipso? That was like bringing a squirt gun to a supernova showdown. His kryptonite was light, and I couldn't exactly shoot laser beams from my eyeballs. I was also broke in the points department, with zero chance of buying anything remotely useful against him. Lost in my futile brainstorm, the penguin's patience wore thin. "Well? You planning on waking up anytime soon?" he snapped, yanking me out of my reverie. I let out a sigh and rubbed my temples. "Look, Mr. Cobblepot, I hate to burst your bubble, but you're punching way above your weight class here," I confessed, shaking my head. "Taking on Eclipso? That's a one-way ticket to a world of hurt." Penguin scoffed, his feathers clearly ruffled. "And who said anything about me personally taking on Eclipso? Who do you think you're talking to?" he retorted, sounding genuinely offended. "I'll simply hire someone to do the dirty work for me. All you need to do is spill the beans on Eclipso's Achilles heel, assuming you know it, and I'll handle the rest," he concluded, his eyes glinting with the brand of vengefulness that was unique to him. Before I could respond to Penguin's request, a notification from the system suddenly popped up in my vision. "You have received the quest, Operation Light Brigade." I sighed inwardly before shifting my attention to the penguin. "Give me a minute, will you? I just need to gather my thoughts," I requested, and Penguin shot me a quizzical glance before consenting with a nod. Without wasting any time, I accessed the quest details to see what it entailed. The prompt read. Operation Light Brigade, Eclipso is back to his usual mischief in Parador, hatching a devious scheme. Your task? Rally as many allies as possible before his showdown with the heroes and prepare to either assist Eclipso or thwart his plans. Rewards, unlock the system's currency exchange function, along with 1,500 points. Well, look what the cat dragged in, I muttered to myself as I schemed through the quest description. Guess even the system is asking me to table with Mr. Sunshine Stealer, hey? Fine. Bring it on, universe. I glanced up at the penguin, wearing my best poker face. So, you're itching to put Eclipso in a timeout, hey? Well, you don't have to look far. I'm your man, but I ain't doing this for free, I declared with a smirk. I want a truckload of cash and your full support. Penguin's face did a little dance between amusement and suspicion. Funny how you went from zero to hero on this Eclipso gig, he quipped, giving me the once-over. What's with the sudden change of heart? I waved off his skepticism. Don't worry, I'm not pulling a fast one on you if that's what you're getting at. You're the only reliable source of information in Gotham, and that's worth more than some quick cash gains for me. I reassured him, leaning in. But about Eclipso, let's just say the guy's a bigger threat than anyone can imagine. Someone's gotta step up, and I'm feeling a bit heroic today, I added, speaking in a slightly more serious tone. The penguin hummed thoughtfully, his rotund figure sinking into the plush cushions of his seat. Well, you've got confidence, if nothing else, he remarked, giving me a once-over with his beady eyes. So, spill the beans. Got a master plan brewing? Let's just say I've got a rough sketch in mind, I replied with a half-smile, leaning in. Give me a little time to polish it up, and I promise you, it'll be a showstopper. You'll be thanking me while sipping your finest brandy. Penguin's grin widened, revealing a row of crooked teeth. You're an interesting one, I'll give you that, he chuckled. But talk is cheap. I need to see the results. You've got until tomorrow to wow me with your brilliance. I nodded, feeling a surge of adrenaline. You've got a deal, I declared, extending my hand. Penguin met it with a firm shake, sealing our agreement. Stepping out of his office, a wave of exhilaration washed over me. The whole Eclipse debacle marked my first real test since I came to this world, and I was now itching to prove myself. With a newfound determination, I was ready to make my mark and show everyone what I was capable of. This was my moment to shine, and I wasn't about to let it slip through my fingers, though a sense of nervousness still lingered in my mind. Crusader number 65. Within the borders of the island country, Parador, Yolanda Montez found herself seated inside the transportation helicopter, her brow furrowed as she watched the lush green landscape roll by beneath them. A sense of unease had settled over her ever since she first heard about the mission, and Micah's cryptic words in Ted Grant's office only served to amplify that feeling. Trying to push aside her apprehensions, Yolanda surveyed her team members inside the helicopter. There was Bruce Gordon and Mona Bennett, the duo leading the mission, focused and determined. Then there was Peacemaker, the trigger-happy pilot whose enthusiasm for violent justice was palpable. Next to him sat Cave Carson, instrumental in guiding the team through the underwater cave system to gain entry into the island. And lastly, there was the wild card, Crusader, a mysterious figure suggested by Ted Grant to replace Micah. Clad in a futuristic knight's helmet and a tattered black cape with a large white cross painted on the back, Crusader sat quietly, clutching a small wooden cross and murmuring prayers. Yolanda first assumed it was a bad joke, thinking he was Micah in disguise, but his height, build, the way he spoke, and how little he talked were all distinctly different from her godfather's protégé. As Yolanda's mind raced with questions about Crusader's mysterious presence, she couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling gnawing at her gut. Bruce Gordon's casual acceptance of him without so much as a background check only added to her suspicion. But before she could delve deeper into her thoughts, Peacemaker's urgent voice shattered the silence. The other team's taken a hit. And we're next on the list. He barked, his tone edged with urgency. Brace yourselves. His words were punctuated by the sudden jolt as he wrestled with the controls, attempting to evade the incoming missile. Despite his skilled maneuvers, their fate was sealed. The missile struck the helicopter's tail, sending it careening toward the ground in a tumultuous spiral. Amidst the chaos, Yolanda's head collided with a metallic object, leaving her dazed and struggling to maintain consciousness as the world spun around her. As Yolanda slowly came to, the scene around her was a chaotic blur of twisted metal and encroaching flames. Her teammates lay scattered nearby, their fates uncertain amidst the wreckage. Before she could fully grasp the situation, the sharp crack of gunfire shattered the eerie silence. Her gaze snapped to Crusader, the enigmatic figure from their team who stood defiant amid the chaos. He moved with uncanny agility, dodging bullets with an ease that seemed almost otherworldly. The stark white cross emblazoned on the back of his cape billowed in the wind as he returned fire with his 1991 pistol, his movements fluid and precise. With a flurry of motion, Crusader swiftly exhausted his ammunition before seamlessly transitioning to his dual short swords. With a deft flick of his wrist, he deflected incoming bullets before disappearing into the foliage, his silhouette vanishing from Yolanda's sight. In the distance, several screams echoed before the clamor of battle subsided, replaced by distant screams that echoed through the air. Moments later, Crusader returned to the crash site, his figure untouched by the violence that had unfolded mere moments before. Crusader knelt beside Yolanda amidst the wreckage, swiftly cutting through her seatbelt with a practiced hand. "Can you walk?" he inquired, his voice calm yet urgent. Yolanda attempted to move, but a sharp pain shot through her leg, making her grimace. "I think my leg's broken," she admitted, her jaw clenched. "But I'll manage." "You need to help the others," she insisted, pushing through the discomfort. Without hesitation, Crusader rose to his feet, stepping back to retrieve his small wooden cross. "He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities," he murmured, his words invoking a sense of mysticism that left Yolanda bewildered. "The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds, we are healed," he continued his chant, the cross emanating a soft, golden light that enveloped them both. To Yolanda's surprise, the pain dissipated, replaced by a sudden sense of relief and clarity. Even the dizziness from the crash seemed to vanish in an instant. "You should be able to move now. Quickly, help the others," Crusader urged, his tone unwavering. Shaking off her initial shock, Yolanda nodded, rising to her feet to assist her teammates. As she moved among them, she noticed a gradual stirring among the unconscious figures, each awakening with renewed vigor thanks to Crusader's miraculous intervention. Crusader and Yolanda sprang into action, aiding their disoriented comrades as they struggled to stand amidst the wreckage. But it was Peacemaker who vocalized the perplexity gripping the group. "What the hell just happened? I feel like I've been reborn," he exclaimed, his eyes wide with incredulity as he flexed his now pain-free shoulder. "I've been nursing this sprained muscle forever, but now it's like it never existed," he marveled, casting a puzzled glance at his teammates. Yolanda shrugged, her gaze drifting toward the enigmatic figure of Crusader, who stood at a distance, his stance alert and watchful. "Looks like our new friend here managed to work some miracles," she said, nodding in Crusader's direction. "He took down the attackers and patched us up along the way," she added, her tone casual despite the extraordinary events. Bruce Gordon's reaction didn't escape her notice, a flicker of surprise danced across his features before he quickly composed himself. Before any further discussion could unfold, however, the tranquility was shattered by the rustling of foliage nearby. Emerging from the thicket were 5 formidable figures, spotted hyenas, their snarls echoing through the air as they locked eyes with the shadow fighters. These were no ordinary beasts, their robust build and the distinctive grey half-circle markings on their faces bespoke of something far more sinister lurking within them. Peacemaker, unfazed by the appearance of the ominous hyenas, swiftly drew his pistol and took aim, firing a shot directly at the nearest beast. The bullet struck true, piercing the creature's skull. Yet, to everyone's astonishment, the hyena showed no signs of harm as its wound began to close before their eyes. In a sudden and unexpected move, the resilient predator lunged at Peacemaker, catching him off guard. Before disaster could strike, Crusader appeared just in time, delivering a powerful kick that sent the hyena sprawling. With practiced precision, Crusader retrieved his wooden cross and began to chant, invoking divine protection. "For it is God who arms me with strength and keeps my way secure, that I shall strike with the light of his fury," he intoned, the glow enveloping him and the shadow fighters. "And so shall his faithful," he added, the golden aura spreading to encompass them all. Peacemaker shot Crusader a puzzled look, as if on the cusp of voicing his thoughts, but Crusader swiftly intervened. "Try shooting them again," he instructed. Without hesitation, Peacemaker raised his pistol, now aglow with the same divine light, and fired once more at the hyena. The bullet, infused with radiant energy, found its mark once more, causing the creature to crumple to the ground, a dark, ethereal mist billowing from its fallen form. As if anticipating the moment, Crusader surged forward, directing a beam of blinding light at the dissipating cloud of dark energy. With a shriek that seemed to echo from the very depths of the surroundings, the mist vanished into thin air. Without hesitation, Crusader drew his two short swords, now glowing with a radiant golden light, and charged at the remaining hyenas. Peacemaker and Yolanda exchanged glances before joining the fray. Empowered by the golden energy, the trio swiftly dispatched the predatory creatures, while Crusader set to work cleansing the dark influence that had possessed them. "Nice trick there, buddy," Peacemaker remarked with a grin, giving Crusader a friendly pat on the back. "You some kind of exorcist or what?" he quipped, raising an eyebrow. "You could say that," Crusader replied calmly. "Indeed, I've come to exorcise a great evil in these lands," he added, casting a meaningful glance in Bruce Gordon's direction. Yolanda and Peacemaker both wore expressions of confusion at Crusader's cryptic words. "What exactly are you talking about?" Yolanda inquired, her gaze shifting between Crusader and Bruce Gordon. "That's not my tale to tell," Crusader answered cryptically. "You'd be wise to ask the man who brought you here," he suggested before stepping away from the group, leaving them to ponder his words. All eyes turned to Bruce Gordon, who sighed in resignation. "I may have withheld some details about this mission," he admitted. "Let's regroup with the other team, and I'll explain everything," he suggested, motioning for the others to follow. Conflict number 66. As the two teams reunited, they exchanged reports of their experiences so far, but all eyes soon turned to Bruce Gordon, awaiting his explanation. Bruce couldn't shake the sense of annoyance that prickled at him. He had meticulously crafted a plan to rid himself and the world of Eclipso, a torment that had haunted him for the better part of his life. First, he had tracked down the black diamonds, fragments of the heart of darkness imprisoning Eclipso's essence. Through some cunning maneuvering, he had arranged for them to be sent to Parador, facilitating Eclipso's resurgence. Then, he had infiltrated Parador to gather solid evidence, intending to present it to powerful figures like Amanda Waller and Sarge Steele, securing their support to vanquish Eclipso once and for all. Everything had been going according to plan until 2 days before the mission's start when Amanda Waller had called him. Her instructions had been clear and non-negotiable: a man named Crusader would request to join the mission, and Bruce was to accept him without question. Though he found the directive peculiar and had the urge to argue, he knew better than to challenge Waller's authority. The addition of a new member to the team introduced an unknown variable, but Bruce reasoned that one man wouldn't alter the outcome significantly. As long as he could expose Eclipso for the true monster he was and rally the entire world against him, nothing else mattered. Not Waller, not the Shadow Fighters, no one. Or so he had believed. But as it turned out, Crusader was a much larger variable than Gordon could ever expect. Crusader's unexpected knowledge of the true nature of their mission had thrown him off balance, and now he faced the daunting task of explaining it to the Shadow Fighters, who were clearly ready to pounce if they didn't like what they heard. Peacemaker and the Creeper, in particular, seemed eager to rip him to shreds. "Now then," Gordon began, clearing his throat to buy a moment's reprieve from the hostile stares. "Please keep calm and hear me out. I have crucial information about the target of our mission," he announced, trying to maintain an air of authority despite feeling anything but in control. He paused, gathering his thoughts as he continued. "You were all led to believe that our target was the Count, a local drug lord. But the truth is, we're after something far more sinister. Eclipso, a demonic entity currently possessing the Count," Gordon revealed, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. Before he could even finish his explanation, the Creeper stepped forward, looming over Gordon with an intimidating presence that made it clear he meant business. Gripping Gordon's collar, he raised him to eye level, his grin belying the threat in his voice. "Why the hell are we just hearing about this now?" the Creeper demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "Think deep and hard before you answer, because while I might be smiling, that doesn't mean I won't snap you like a twig," he warned, his eyes gleaming with a predatory glint. Gordon raised his hands in a gesture of surrender, hoping to quell the rising tension. "Look, I get it. You're all mad, and you've got every right to be. But please, hear me out before you resort to violence," he implored, meeting the intense gaze of the Creeper head-on. The Creeper grunted in frustration, releasing Gordon's collar and taking a step back. "Fine, I'm listening. But make it quick," he growled, his tone leaving no room for argument. Gordon nodded, grateful for the opportunity to explain himself. "The reason I kept this information from you is simple: nobody would have believed me if I told you that a demonic entity capable of threatening the entire world was pulling the strings behind a mere drug lord," he admitted, his voice tinged with exasperation. I needed a more believable cover, which is why I focused on the Count as our target, he explained, hoping they would understand his reasoning. I had planned to come clean about everything once we were safely on the ground in Parador. But then, Crusader here beat me to the punch, Gordon continued, shooting a pointed glance in Crusader's direction. The mysterious figure seemed unfazed, keeping vigilant watch over the area and ignoring the discussion as if the whole situation had nothing to do with him. Gordon's frustration was palpable. He had intended to maintain control over the situation and reveal the truth in his own time. However, now that someone else revealed the fact first, his credibility was heavily compromised. It seemed Crusader had deliberately disrupted his plans, casting doubt on his leadership and causing chaos within the team. Or at least, that was Gordon's suspicion. Gordon's internal turmoil was interrupted by Peacemaker's scoff, his frustration palpable as he voiced his concerns. So, what? We're just supposed to swallow this load of bull and pretend everything's hunky-dory. Peacemaker's hand hovered near his pistol, his agitation evident. You dragged us into this mess without so much as a heads up about the danger we were walking into, he accused, his anger boiling over. And what if Crusader hadn't shown up? We'd have been mincemeat for those damn hyenas. Gordon clenched his jaw, feeling the ground slipping from beneath him. He had intended to unveil his arsenal of solar tech weaponry, ready to combat Eclipso and his possessed minions, but before he could, Crusader stepped forward, diffusing the tension. Let's all take a breather, Crusader interjected, placing a calming hand on Peacemaker's shoulder as he addressed the group. While it's true that Gordon withheld crucial information, he's not the sole culprit here, he asserted calmly, drawing everyone's attention. The blame extends to the Office of Meta-Human Affairs and even myself. I could have disclosed the truth before the mission commenced, but I chose not to, he admitted, bowing his head in remorse. Eclipso poses a grave threat, but I have faith in this team's ability to eradicate him once and for all, he affirmed, lifting his gaze to meet theirs. The path ahead may be fraught with challenges, but the Lord only presents his children with trials he knows they can overcome, he continued. Trust in God, trust in one another, and we shall see this through to the end, he concluded, his words imbued with a sense of conviction. At Peacemaker's resigned acceptance, a wave of relief swept through the group, their tension easing. Well, I suppose we're in it now, whether we like it or not, he remarked with a weary shrug. Time to wing it, I guess, he added, shaking his head. The collective agreement among the team members was like a balm to the situation, but Gordon couldn't help but suppress a twitch of frustration. Not only had Crusader thrust him into this predicament, but now he swooped in at a critical moment to resolve the conflict, overshadowing Gordon's leadership at every turn. Yolanda, however, wasn't as quick to brush off their predicament. I don't think we're out of the water just yet, we've won our first thanks to Cruster's magic. She interjected, her tone more cautious than the others. But Eclipso can possess and enhance anyone. If we encounter more of his minions, how are we supposed to stand a chance if we're divided? Her question hung heavy in the air, drawing the group's attention. Gordon seized the opportunity to unveil his contingency plan, ready to showcase his solar tech arsenal and regain some semblance of control. Yet, before he could speak, Crusader intervened. I'm sure Mr. Gordon has a few tricks up his sleeve, Crusader reassured, his tone cryptic yet oddly confident. After all, I was a last-minute addition to the team, he added, diffusing any further tension. All eyes swiveled back to Gordon, their collective gaze a mix of impatience and skepticism. Well? What's the hold-up, chump? The creeper's voice dripped with irritation, his frustration palpable. Don't tell me. You were just waiting for the perfect moment to whip out your trump card, right? Like, when we're all already 6 feet under. His words came out in a low growl, laced with suspicion. Gordon's response was a bitter smile, a feeble attempt to mask the turmoil brewing within him. Not at all. I had every intention of revealing my solar tech arsenal at the earliest opportunity, he explained, his tone tinged with regret. But circumstances, well, they haven't exactly been cooperative, he added with a shrug. The creeper's scoff was laden with disdain, his gaze piercing with distrust. If you say so. He muttered, clearly unconvinced. Once over number 67. Observing Bruce Gordon trudging through the dense forest, lost in his own world of frustration and contemplation, I struggled to stifle a chuckle. From the moment Yolanda mentioned him, I had a gut feeling about the guy, and meeting him in person only confirmed my suspicions. Now, as I watched him, it was all too clear, he saw these people, the shadow fighters, as pawns in his game against Eclipso. He didn't give a damn about their lives, and his supposed brilliance? Well, let's just say it didn't shine as brightly as he thought. Sure, he might be Earth's go-to guy for solar tech, but when it came to planning, he was utterly clueless. I mean, who in their right mind infiltrates an island through an underwater cave system? It was a recipe for disaster from the get-go. And then there was the little detail of 2 conveniently waiting helicopters upon our emergence from said caves. Sneak-in prepped helicopters under enemy noses? Sure. But sneaking in a bunch of vigilantes and government agents is a no-go? Come on, really? Whether it was sheer incompetence on Gordon's part or lazy writing on the DC Comics team, I couldn't say, nor did I particularly care. What mattered was that if we kept following Gordon's lead, almost everyone would likely end up 6 feet under. So, I made it my personal mission to mess with him every chance I got from the moment this mission kicked off. Taking a step back, you might be wondering how I ended up here, in the thick of this mission. Well, let me tell you, it involved pulling just about every string I had in my arsenal. After my sit-down with the Penguin, I hightailed it back to my apartment and launched into an epic brainstorming session that lasted hours. By the time I emerged, I had a solid plan of action. So, back to the Penguin's office, I went, ready to wow him with my strategy. I won't bore you with the nitty-gritty of our meeting, but let's just say it involved me dialing up my persuasion skills to 11 and even letting the Penguin take a spin with my trusty lie detector ring to quell any doubts he had. Eventually, he saw the light and agreed to throw his weight behind my mission. Next up, getting myself on the actual Eclipso hunting squad. Surprisingly, that part was a breeze. A quick visit to Livewire, sneaking in a phone for her, courtesy of my shadow storage, and a request for her to work her hacking magic on Belle Reve. Livewire was all in, especially since she had a bone to pick with whoever was keeping her locked up. When I swung back to check on her progress, Livewire had all the juicy details I needed to give Waller a little nudge. Let's just say, after a bit of persuasive conversation, Waller was suddenly very keen on including me in the mission and backing off from Livewire's case. Easy peasy, right? With my spot secured on the team and Penguin's backing guaranteed, I shifted my focus to the quest I'd been handed, Operation Light Brigade. The wording of the quest was what really caught my attention. It wasn't about taking down Eclipso, but rather about gathering allies to confront him. That choice of words was one of the main reasons I decided to dive headfirst into the Eclipso situation. So, off I went, pulling in favors left, right, and center to rally some troops. And you know what? I succeeded. The quest ended as smoothly as it began, with me successfully rounding up allies to face the impending Eclipso showdown. As for the rewards, they were nothing to sneeze at, a sweet 1,500 points and access to the currency exchange function. Now, at the time, my point balance wasn't exactly overflowing, but it wasn't the points that had me grinning from ear to ear. No, it was the currency exchange system that had me doing a little victory dance. This system's currency exchange function was the real VIP, the game changer. It did exactly what it said on the tin, converting real-life cash into points, and vice versa, at a jaw-dropping rate of 1 point for every $1,000. Crunching the numbers, that meant a cool 1,000 points for every million in the bank. And guess who just happened to have a tidy 10 million sitting pretty in their account? Yours truly. Despite the pang in both my heart and my wallet, I went ahead and converted 5 million into 5,000 points, kicking off a shopping spree that started with the light mojo I'd showcased while facing off against those pesky hyenas. The spree ended with me snagging a few tools to perfect my new alter ego, Crusader. Now, you might be wondering why the disguise? Well, call it a rare moment of caution on my part. Sure, I was gearing up to take down Eclipso once and for all, but the guy had a knack for bouncing back, and if he did make a comeback, I sure as hell didn't want to be his first stop. As for why I chose this particular character, the answer's simple, no reason at all, really. I've always had a soft spot for the concept of a badass, gun-toting, sword-wielding priest with a flair for light mojo. It was just me indulging my inner child and conjuring up a character I thought was pretty darn cool. And hey, no apologies necessary. Sure, I might not be the most religious person around, but I sure knew how to play the part. The chanting, the gestures, heck, the whole shebang was just an act. Did I need any of it to activate the light mojo? Not really. But hey, why not add a little extra flair? Now, about that so-called light mojo, it was simply light magic. The keyword here being magic, not control or manipulation like with my shadow powers. Magic encompassed everything associated with light, from healing to buffing allies. On the other hand, opting for light control would have meant zapping foes with light beams and whatnot. Not that I couldn't do that with light magic, mind you, but it just made the skill way more expensive. With light magic setting me back a hefty 4,500 points, it was definitely a splurge. But hey, when you're up against someone like Eclipso, you can't exactly skimp on the utility power. Now, as for the favors I pulled and the allies I recruited, well, that's a story for another time. Why just tell you when I can show you, after all. The Count, possessed by the malevolent force of Eclipso, lounged in the darkness of his opulent mansion, a stark contrast to the vibrant tropical paradise outside its walls. The lush greenery and colorful flora of Parador's environs stood in stark contrast to the gloomy ambience within the room. Amidst the shadows that danced ominously around him, the Count observed intently as floating specters depicted scenes from the Parador forest. There, Bruce Gordon and his team of hired heroes trudged through the dense foliage, unaware of the sinister gaze fixed upon them. A twisted grin of amusement twisted the Count's features as he surveyed their progress, relishing the chaos he had orchestrated. In his mind, they were mere pawns in his grand game, destined to fall prey to his cunning stratagems. If all has gone according to plan, Eclipso's voice echoed within the Count's mind, dripping with malice and satisfaction, they should all be dead by now, save for Gordon and the mother of his child. A sinister chuckle escaped the Count's lips as he reveled in the thought of their imminent demise, ripped apart by the possessed hyenas. Yet, the sudden appearance of the enigmatic crusader had thrown a wrench into his carefully laid schemes. Ah, but even in chaos, there is opportunity, Eclipso's voice hissed, a gleeful anticipation lacing his words. They may have stumbled upon an unexpected variable, but they remain within our grasp. They shall not escape so easily. The Count's grin widened, reflecting Eclipso's glee, his eyes gleaming with malevolent intent as he contemplated the impending doom that awaited his unsuspecting prey. With Crusader's interference, the game had grown even more thrilling, and Eclipso relished the prospect of toying with his prey before delivering the final blow. Dark Palace number 68. In the dim, sketchy depths of the drug lab nestled deep in the Parador jungle, I found myself squaring off against three goons who looked like they'd been binging on Eclipso-flavored shadows. With a flick of my wrists, I summoned my trusty twin short swords, their tips twinkling with the radiant energy of light magic. Taking a quick scan around, I noticed the rest of the shadow fighters duking it out in their own corners before I turned my attention back to my creepy adversaries. No time for hesitation. I lunged forward, ready to tango with these shadowy dudes. The first one, hovering above the ground like some discount wizard, shot out a dark, worm-like twisty tendril my way. Gross, right? But I wasn't about to let some shadow worm ruin my day. I sliced through it like it was made of soggy spaghetti. But wait, there's more. More tendrils came squirming at me from every direction, like a bad case of tentacle flu. I figured, why not crank up the dazzle? I pumped even more light magic into my blade, raising it high in the air and making them shine brighter than a disco ball at a vampire rave. The thugs stumbled back, blinking like they'd just stared into the sun. With them momentarily blinded, I went full-on action hero and barreled toward the closest thug. I wrestled him to the ground and grabbed his noggin, ready to give him a taste of my divine light show. Be buried in the light of God, I proclaimed for no reason whatsoever as I zapped him with enough light magic to make a disco ball jealous. With a grimace, I watched as the thug's body twitched and spasmed as he'd just downed a bad batch of expired energy drinks. The half-circle mark on his face fizzled away into nothing, leaving behind one ordinary-looking guy, aside from the fact that he'd just been possessed by a demonic creature. But there was no time to dwell on the weirdness. Unlike the hyenas, no smoke cloud escaped the thug's body, just a little black diamond projectile spewing out of his mouth like he was auditioning for a low-budget magic show. Quick reflexes kicked in, and I snagged the thing mid-air, tossing it into my shadow storage before it could pull any more tricks. Before I could even catch my breath, the other two shadow goons decided to play tag team, charging at me like I'd insulted their mama. Ah, the joys of multitasking, I muttered under my breath, giving my twin blades a twirl as I squared up to meet them head-on. It's time to wrap this up, pronto. After a solid 15-minute smackdown, I stood amidst the wreckage of the now-burning drug lab, surveying my handiwork. The place was a mess, with thugs strewn like confetti, and the flames licking hungrily at what was left of their shady operations. The local authorities were in for a treat with all these miscreants gift-wrapped and cuffed. Dealing with the other two goons possessed by Eclipso wasn't exactly a cakewalk, but hey, I managed. They coughed up those pesky black diamonds just like the first guy. I retrieved one of the diamonds from my shadowy storage and tried my light magic cleansing trick. The diamond glowed brightly for a second, but the darkness came creeping back the moment I stopped. Still, it looked a tad less ominous, which was a win in my book. With the diamond safely stashed away for later pondering, I turned to check on the shadow fighters. They were all high-fiving and hooping it up, basking in the glory of another job well done. 3 days in Parador, and we'd been hitting the Count's drug dens like a wrecking ball, freeing folks from Eclipso's clutches left and right. Morale was sky high, but call me paranoid, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were going a little too smoothly. You know that gut twist sensation when the calm feels more like the eye of a storm? Yeah, that. The past few days had been like walking through a fog of uncertainty, but now, it felt like we were barreling straight into the heart of a storm. Then, to top it all off, the night decided to pull a real number on us. The sky darkened, the stars dimmed, and this bone-chilling cold settled in. Like clockwork, a figure started to coalesce out of the shadows. And, yep, you guessed it, it wasn't the ice cream man. Eclipso yet, the big bad we'd been hunting stepped into the spotlight. He was all dark and foreboding, the kind of guy who probably had evil mastermind on his business card. But hey, at least I saw this coming from a mile away, so that has to amount to something. Ah, Bruce Gordon and his merry band of misfits, Eclipso crooned, his voice dripping with malice. You've been quite the thorn in my side. I kept up my crusader act, masking the urge to roll my eyes at being dismissed as a supporting character. There you are, fiend! I exclaimed, pointing my gun at Eclipso and firing. He casually tilted his head to the side and dodged the projectile. And what do we have here? An unknown variable wielding the repulsive golden light. He said, maintaining his grin as he looked down at me. I'll have you regret even being born soon enough. Yup, this guy officially pisses me off. I'll definitely wipe that disgusting smirk off his face sooner or later. Speak, demon. What are you scheming? Why did you allow us to move unhindered in your territory? Eclipso chuckled, like he was indulging a particularly amusing joke. Oh, I had to make sure everything was just right for our little meet and greet. And now that we're all here. With a flick of his wrist, he whisked us away to what looked like the swankiest reception hall in the universe. The jerk flashed us a grin. Welcome to my humble abode, my dear shadow fighters. And with that, poof, he was gone, leaving us to pick up the pieces of our suddenly much weirder night. I'll be waiting for you in the throne room, if you can reach it, that is. Eclipso's voice echoed in the area, followed by a sinister chuckle fit for an evil mastermind. Peacemaker wasted no time in getting down to business, his investigative instincts kicking into overdrive. He made his way to the front door, ready to throw it open and shed some light on our mysterious situation. But then, he froze. Something wasn't right. Hey, guys! He called out urgently, his voice tinged with a mix of confusion and disbelief. You need to see this. We all rushed over to see what had him so rattled, and when we looked out the door, our jaws hit the floor. There it was, clear as day, planet Earth, hanging in the sky like some surreal painting. Yolanda summed up what we were all thinking with a shaky voice. Are we on the moon? Her words hung in the air, echoing the disbelief that rippled through the team. It was like a bad sci-fi flick come to life. Trying to regain control of the situation, Gordon stepped forward, attempting to calm the chaos. Everyone, please, let's not panic. This is unexpected, but our mission. Before he could finish, the creeper pounced, grabbing Gordon by the collar with a ferocity that sent a chill down my spine. You shut your mouth, you damned imbecile! The creeper snarled, his grip tightening around Gordon's neck as his eyes burned with rage. We're only in this mess because of you. Realizing what's happening, I sprang into action, darting forward and smacking the creeper's wrist to break his hold on Gordon. The creeper whirled on me, his fury palpable as he swung his arm at me, but I ducked and shoved him away. As the creeper stumbled back, I seized my small wooden cross, clutching it tightly as I began my incantation. Submit yourselves, then, to God, I muttered, infusing the cross with a dazzling light for dramatic effect. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Fear no evil. I added, casting a radiant golden-white glow that flooded the space. Caught off guard, the creeper stumbled mid-charge, confusion clouding his eyes as if he'd just woken up from a particularly bizarre dream. He rubbed his forehead, trying to make sense of it all, before focusing his gaze on me. What happened? He asked, sounding disoriented. Eclipso happened, I replied solemnly. He can only possess those who give in to anger and violence. I explained, my tone matter of fact. That's why he brought us to his palace, where even the slightest annoyance could erupt into blinding rage. Darkside commands at number 69. Yolanda's brow knitted as she processed my words, a blend of worry and perplexity clouding her features. But you just protected us, didn't you? She prodded. Can you keep us shielded from Eclipso's mind games the whole way through? I let out an internal sigh, knowing my response wouldn't be what she wanted to hear. I'm afraid that's a tall order, I admitted, my voice carrying a mix of regret and resolve. It was a fib, plain and simple. I could continue to safeguard the shadow fighters from Eclipso's sway, but frankly, it was a headache I preferred to sidestep. Peacemaker, the Creeper, and Manhunter were ticking time bombs of anger and violence, ripe for possession. Keeping them on a leash would be a job in itself, and frankly, the risk wasn't worth the reward. Regrettable as it may be, it's time for a parting of ways for everyone's sake, I stated, hoping they'd understand without pressing the matter further. Bruce Gordon's eyes widened in disbelief at my declaration. So, you're just going to ditch us and fly solo? He blurted out, desperation edging into his voice. That's practically a death sentence for most of us. Meeting his gaze head-on, I stood my ground. You knew the risks when you signed up for this mission and even dragged these people along with you. I retorted, my words measured and unyielding. Gordon's expression soured, but before he could retort, I raised a hand to cut him off. You should have all been ready to meet your maker when you accepted this mission. But I'm not about to let you die in vain, I continued, fishing a small black stone from the depths of my cape. With a firm grip, I crushed the black stone in my palm, channeling my will into it. Time for you all to head home, I declared, my voice carrying a somber weight. As the final syllable left my lips, a swirling black portal materialized beside me, and from its depths emerged a familiar figure, Raven, the pale-skinned empathy. You're still alive, that's good, she remarked, her tone dry as desert sand as she eyed me. I feared we'd lost you back there in Parador, she continued, her violet eyes assessing me with a mix of relief and suspicion. My brow furrowed in confusion. Lost me? What happened? I inquired, my mind racing to fill in the blanks. Raven's expression shifted, a hint of disbelief coloring her features. You really don't know? She questioned, a note of incredulity in her voice. I shook my head, my curiosity piqued. I don't. Did something happen to Parador? I trailed off, waiting for her response. Her sigh was heavy with the weight of grim news. Parador is gone, she revealed, her voice tinged with sorrow. Satellite imagery showed the entire island engulfed in flames. Everyone there is presumed dead, she concluded, her words casting a pall over the gathered shadow fighters. Gasps of shock and dismay rippled through the group, their faces reflecting the horror of the revelation. But amidst the chaos, my gaze found its way to Bruce Gordon. If only the truth about the threat had been laid bare from the start, if only Waller and her cronies had been forthcoming, maybe the Justice League could have intervened. Maybe an entire nation wouldn't have been reduced to ashes. But this grim turn of events only solidified a nagging suspicion that had been gnawing at me for some time now. For some reason, Eclipso can't or won't kill Bruce Gordon, despite Gordon's possession of the key to Eclipso's downfall, the solar tech. With a heavy heart and a steely resolve, I set my plan into motion. Change of plans, Gordon stays, I announced firmly, striding over to Bruce Gordon and seizing him by the collar. Raven, send the rest back to Earth, I directed, turning to the pale empathy. Without a word, Raven complied, conjuring dark portals beneath the feet of the shadow fighters, one by one whisking them away from the shadowy grip of Eclipso's palace. What in the hell are you? Bruce Gordon began to protest, but I cut him off with a swift, decisive headbutt, knocking him unconscious before he could finish. Raven regarded me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Why keep him here? She inquired, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Eclipso can't kill Gordon for some reason, I explained tersely. And if worst comes to worst, we might just need that, I added, my grip tightening on Gordon's limp form. Her eyes widened in realization, flicking between me and the unconscious Gordon. Are you sure about this? She pressed, her tone edged with doubt. Absolutely, I affirmed, my voice laced with grim determination. After so many people died, doing this the right way is a luxury we can't afford. We have to stop Eclipso by any means necessary, I declared, hoisting Gordon's body over my shoulder. If sacrificing this guy is what it takes, then I'll take full responsibility for it, I concluded, my resolve unshakable as I prepared to face whatever darkness lay ahead. In the dark, ominous throne room of Eclipso's palace, the villain sat upon his darkened throne, his eyes fixated on the swirling shadows within the floating mirrors before him. With a sinister grin, he watched as Crusader made his way through the palace, the flickering light of his powers illuminating the shadows around him. Though Crusader posed a threat with his formidable light abilities, Eclipso remained confident. Thanks to the illusion spells woven throughout the palace, the hero would never reach the throne room no matter how valiant his efforts. As Eclipso reveled in his future plans, the destruction of Parador loomed large in his mind. Already, the world's nations were on edge, pointing fingers and assigning blame. And who would take the fall? None other than the US government, Amanda Waller, and the Office of Meta-Human Affairs. Perfect. All Eclipso needed now were a few unwitting pawns to lure into his palace, and he would have everything he needed to dispose of Crusader, Bruce Gordon, and anyone else foolish enough to stand in his way. But just as he basked in his impending triumph, a suffocating presence enveloped the room. Eclipso's blood ran cold as a shadowy, towering figure materialized before him. With eyes glowing red and a hand poised ominously, the projection of Darksates regarded Eclipso with disdain, as though he were nothing more than an insignificant insect. I've been keeping my eyes on you, your schemes were most entertaining, but this is as far as you go. Darksate's voice echoed through the chamber, a chilling warning to Eclipso. You'd do well to keep your ambitions confined to Earth, or I will have you crushed, he intoned, his words dripping with menace. Gritting his teeth, Eclipso nodded, knowing better than to defy the might of Darkseid. I understand, Lord Darkseid. I will remain on Earth, he vowed, his voice tinged with trepidation. He was willing to play the long game. Though he was helpless before Darkseid now, the time will come when Eclipso rose to rival him in power. He would oblige the god of evil and tyranny and limit himself to Earth for now, but when the time came, Eclipso intended to have the entire universe bowing before him. Darkseid looked at Eclipso with thinly veiled amusement as if he could see right through him, but he quickly lost interest. With a dismissive wave, the apocalyptic tyrant turned his attention to the shadowy mirrors, his interest piqued by the sight of Crusader and Raven navigating through the palace. The aspect of chaos and the demon's daughter, perhaps my visit was unwarranted after all, he mused cryptically. Eclipso couldn't help but ask, what do you mean, Lord Darkseid? Darksate's response was enigmatic, his tone laden with ominous portent. You shall soon see, he replied, his gaze fixed on the swirling shadows before him. Struggle with all your might, O discarded shadow, by all means, make it amusing. Darkseid commands it. The words echoed in the throne room as the projection of Darksate's domineering will slowly fade out of existence as if it were never there. Drastic measures number 70. As we stumbled into what looked like the umpteenth iteration of the reception hall, frustration clenched at my gut. Sure, the furniture was arranged differently each time, but the déjà vu was hitting hard. Running in circles was definitely not how I envisioned spending my day. How long have we been at this? I groaned, shooting a glance at Raven. She sighed wearily, her expression mirroring my annoyance. About an hour and a half, she replied, her tone tinged with frustration. I suspect we're caught in an illusion spell. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the tension knotting my muscles. Can you break it? I asked, my impatience leaking into my voice. Raven shook her head, her brow furrowing with concentration. I've been trying for the last 15 minutes, she confessed. But it'll likely take another hour or two to dispel it completely. My frown deepened, and I glanced between Raven and the unconscious Bruce Gordon sprawled on the ground. With a resigned sigh, I made up my mind. Forget it, I muttered, tossing Gordon's limp form onto the floor. Retrieving my gun, I leveled it at Gordon's leg, my voice echoing through the empty hall. Eclipso. I know you're watching. If you don't want your little plaything to suffer, you better show yourself now. Silence greeted my demand, mocking me with its emptiness. I sucked in a breath, steeling myself for what came next. Without hesitation, I pulled the trigger, the gunshot ripping through the stillness of the room. Gordon's eyes snapped open, his screams of agony filling the air as pain coursed through his body. I saw Raven flinch, her gaze averted, but I pushed aside any guilt. Your buddy here's got a new bullet hole in his leg. I called out, my voice laced with a mix of frustration and impatience. He's bleeding out, and it won't take more than 5 for him to breathe his last. Once again, my demands echoed into the void, met only with the cold silence of the empty room. Without a second thought, I shifted my aim to Gordon's other leg and squeezed the trigger, the sharp crack of the gunshot punctuating the air. That's 2 holes in less than 2 minutes. I barked out, my frustration mounting with every passing second. You've got till the count of 10 before he gets a 3rd hole in his head. I threatened, my finger hovering dangerously close to the trigger. Before I could even begin the countdown, shadows coalesced before me, gradually taking the form of Eclipso. His presence exuded a menacing aura, his grey skin contrasting starkly against the darkness that surrounded him. He wore black pants and a purple pointed hood, the lack of a shirt exposing his muscular frame. Ah, the troublesome variable rears its head, Eclipso remarked, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips as he looked down at us, both literally and figuratively. And here you are, masquerading as a hero, he taunted, his voice dripping with disdain. But I wasn't in the mood for banter. With a swift motion, I pointed my finger at Eclipso and unleashed a beam of blinding light, hoping to catch him off guard. Yet, Eclipso proved elusive, his form dissipating into black smoke before my attack could find its mark, only to reappear elsewhere. With a frustrated sigh, I reached into my cloak, retrieving a healing potion I'd procured earlier. Feed this to Gordon, he's a piece of shit, but he's still useful, I instructed, tossing the potion to Raven. I'll handle Eclipso, I declared, summoning a long sword of pure light into my hand. With determination coursing through my veins, I advanced toward Eclipso, my sword gleaming with radiant energy. He regarded me with a mixture of amusement and disdain, his eyes glowing with an unsettling crimson hue. You think you can challenge me? Eclipso scoffed, his voice dripping with arrogance. You are but a mere mortal, wielding borrowed power. I ignored his taunts, focusing instead on closing the distance between us. With a swift motion, I swung my sword, aiming for Eclipso's chest. But once again, he vanished into shadow, reappearing behind me with unnerving speed. Before I could react, Eclipso struck, his fists crackling with dark energy as he unleashed a barrage of punches. I staggered under the onslaught, feeling the impact reverberate through my body despite the Guardian Veil barrier taking the brunt of the damage. Gritting my teeth against the pain, I summoned my light magic, covering myself in a protective aura. The dark energy dissipated upon contact with the light and forced Eclipso to jump back, leaving me unscathed. Refusing to waste any time, I lunged at Eclipso, slashing at him with all the strength and speed I could muster. But he was a slippery foe, dodging and weaving with unnatural grace. Despite my best efforts, Eclipso seemed to have the upper hand, his attacks relentless and ferocious. I knew I didn't stand a chance in a physical confrontation, but I didn't think it would be to this extent. With a smirk curling on my lips, I activated my Stormwalker shoes, gearing up for some down and dirty combat tactics. With a surge of power coursing through me, I blurred into motion, exploiting the shoe's speed boost to dart right in front of Eclipso, my blade already on its way. Eclipso's surprise was evident in his widened eyes, but he wasn't one to be caught off guard for long. With a swift motion, he raised his hand, halting my light blade in its tracks with an unseen force. Gritting my teeth, I dispelled the blade, opting instead to blind him with a burst of searing light aimed straight at his face. His pained grunt was music to my ears as I conjured another light blade, thrusting it toward his chest. But just when victory seemed within reach, the blade halted, mere inches away from his body, thwarted by a barrier akin to my guardian veil. I poured all my strength into trying to break through the barrier, but it held firm, frustratingly resilient. As Eclipso began to retreat, morphing into shadowy mist, a dark chain emerged from the ground, ensnaring his leg and anchoring him in place. Raven's timely intervention saved the day, though I barely had a moment to appreciate it amidst the chaos of battle. Mustering all my power, I unleashed a relentless barrage of light spears, bombarding Eclipso with all the fury I could muster. With determination blazing in my eyes, I unleashed a relentless assault on Eclipso, bombarding him with flying light spears from point-blank range. As if that wasn't enough, I materialized light hammers in my hands, swinging them with all my might, aiming to shatter the barrier protecting him. Blow after blow, I hammered away until finally, the barrier crumbled under the force of my assault. Without a moment's hesitation, the hammers transformed into swords, and I drove one deep into Eclipso's chest, while the light spears continued to impale him from all sides. Yet, despite the onslaught, he remained standing, his hateful glare burning into me. But I wasn't about to let him off easy. With grim determination, I swung the other blade at his neck, aiming to end this once and for all. Time seemed to stretch as the blade hurtled toward its target, but before it could make contact, Eclipso erupted in a furious scream. Enough! His voice echoed with power, sending a shockwave that blasted me backward and dispersed Raven's magic chain that bound him. The light spears embedded in his body faded away, replaced by swirling dark energy that began to knit his wounds back together. You are but an ant. Eclipso's voice thundered, his form expanding with ominous power. Your futile attempts to strike down a god no longer amuse me. His proclamation rang out as his dark aura intensified. It is time to put you in your place. As Eclipso's form continued to expand, the reception hall couldn't contain him anymore. The ceiling crumbled under the weight of his immense presence, and before I knew it, his head brushed against the roof, causing it to collapse, revealing the starry sky above. Well, shit! I cursed softly, watching as the structure around us began to crumble, the air rushing out into the vacuum of space. How the hell am I supposed to fight in space? Changing scenery number 71. Taking in the sight of Eclipso's gargantuan form and the crumbling palace, my gut reaction was to leg it and find a way out. But bailing now felt like chucking in the towel too soon. I mean, sure, surviving in space wasn't exactly on my to-do list, but I wasn't about to let things end like this. With a cool 5 mil still sitting in my bank account, I figured I had room to maneuver and buy something from the system. Just as I was weighing my options, a dark energy blanket wrapped around me, Raven, and good ol' Bruce Gordon. It was like being snuggled up in a cozy, shadowy cocoon. Not sure what else you can do about this. Raven's voice cut through the eerie quiet, her eyes locked on Eclipso's expanding form, pulsating with dark energy. But if you're itching for a throwdown, this barrier should keep us breathing in the vacuum of space. I shot Raven a nod of thanks. Just what the doctor ordered, I muttered, pulling out my trusty giant slayer sword from the shadow storage. The moment it hit my grip, the blade started to grow, matching the chaos around us as the palace continued its nosedive. Before we knew it, both Eclipso and I were towering at a solid 120 feet, that's about 36 meters for you metric folks. His mug twisted into a snarl as he came barreling toward me, fists like wrecking balls. Normally, I'd be lunch meat, but with the giant slayer beefing up my strength to match my size, I was ready to face him head-on. As Eclipso's colossal fist came hurtling towards me, I didn't even break a sweat. With a casual flick of my wrist, I snagged his punch like it was nothing, then twisted my body, ramming into him with the force of a runaway train. We went tumbling backward, giving me just enough room to hoist my giant slayer sword high. With a deep breath, I poured every ounce of light magic I had into that blade, feeling it crackle with power as I brought it down on Eclipso. The dude seemed pretty confident in his little energy barrier, but that barrier was no match for my beefed-up strength. My blade sliced through it like it was butter, sinking deep into Eclipso's shoulder with a sickening crunch. He howled in pain as the light magic started to seep into his dark form, but I wasn't about to let him off easy. Nope, I tightened my grip on his ugly mug, channeling even more light magic into my hand, causing him to thrash around like a fish out of water. Just when I thought I had him on the ropes, Eclipso pulled a sneaky move, unleashing a shockwave that sent me flying back and reduced what was left of his crumbling palace to rubble. But I wasn't done yet. With a grunt, I wrenched my sword free from his shoulder, dealing him another blow. Before he could catch his breath, I lunged at him again, but he wasn't having it. With a weird wave of his hand, I suddenly found myself smack dab in the mouth of an active volcano, Eclipso still standing before me but now scrambling to put some distance between us. As the searing heat of the volcano enveloped me, I didn't have time to dwell on the sudden change of scenery. Eclipso, ever the slippery one, took advantage of the chaos, leaping back to create some space between us. But I wasn't about to let him off that easy. With the giant slayer still clutched tightly in my hand, I surged forward, the adrenaline pumping through my veins as I closed the distance between us in a heartbeat. Eclipso's eyes blazed with dark energy as he gestured again, the very fabric of reality warping around us. Suddenly, the ground beneath my feet morphed into a writhing mass of shadowy tendrils, threatening to swallow me whole. But I wasn't going down without a fight. With a mighty roar, I summoned every ounce of strength I had, muscles bulging as I pushed against the oppressive force of Eclipso's magic. With sheer brute force and light magic, I tore through the shadowy tendrils, each one dissipating into nothingness as I carved my path forward. Eclipso's face contorted with rage as he realized his spells were no match for my superhuman strength. With a snarl, he hurled a barrage of dark energy at me, each blast crackling with malevolent power. But I was ready for him. With lightning-fast reflexes, I deflected each blast with my sword, the crackling energy fizzling out harmlessly against the blade's shimmering surface. Closing in on Eclipso once more, I raised my sword high, ready to deliver the final blow. With a primal scream, I swung the blade at Eclipso's neck with all my might, the force of the impact sending shockwaves rippling through the air. Again, it was not meant to be. As the ground beneath me trembled, I felt a sudden weightlessness wash over me. Before I could grasp what was happening, Eclipso's dark magic whisked us away, transporting us high into the air above a vast expanse of ocean. The wind whipped past us, carrying the salty scent of the sea as far as the eye could see. Without missing a beat, Eclipso took to the air, his form silhouetted against the crimson sky. I followed suit, sprinting through the very sky. With each step, I conjured footholds made of shimmering light magic, creating a makeshift path through the empty air. Eclipso glared back at me, his eyes burning with fury as he soared through the clouds. I pursued him relentlessly, closing the distance with each passing moment. But he was fast, his movements fluid and unpredictable as he darted through the sky like a bird of prey. With a surge of determination, I pushed myself harder, channeling every ounce of strength and speed at my disposal. The ocean stretched out below us, a vast expanse of endless blue, its waves crashing against the distant shoreline. But I couldn't afford to be distracted by the breathtaking scenery. Eclipso was still ahead of me, his dark form growing smaller and smaller against the horizon. With a fierce battle cry, I activated my Stormwalker shoes, determined to catch him before he could slip away. As we continued our airborne duel, I unleashed a barrage of light magic, each blast crackling with power as it streaked through the sky. Eclipso dodged and weaved, his movements graceful and fluid as he danced through the air. But I refused to let him escape. With a mighty leap, I launched myself forward, closing the distance between us in a heartbeat. Eclipso turned to face me, his eyes flashing with malice as he prepared to meet my attack head-on. With a swift motion, I swung my giant slayer sword, the blade gleaming with radiant light as it sliced through the air. Eclipso raised his hands to defend himself, but it was too late. My blade struck true, carving a deep gash across his chest and sending him reeling backward. As I stabbed Eclipso in the chest, I wrapped my light magic around him, restraining his strength and preventing him from teleporting us to a different location. But even as I kept him pinned, the scenery shifted once more, and we both crashed into the vast expanse of the ocean below. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the water as we plummeted into the depths, our staggering sizes and weights dragging us down into the abyss. The pressure of the ocean closed in around us, the darkness swallowing us whole as we sank deeper and deeper into the murky depths. Despite the chaos and confusion, I refused to let go of Eclipso, my grip on him tightening with each passing moment. With my light magic holding him in place, he struggled and thrashed against my restraint, but I held firm, refusing to yield an inch. As we sank deeper into the ocean's depths, the pressure intensified, crashing down upon us like a vice. But I refused to falter, channeling every ounce of strength and determination I had to maintain my grip on Eclipso. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we reached the ocean floor, the darkness pressing in around us like a suffocating blanket. With one final surge of effort, I managed to cleave Eclipso's gigantic body into two and dissipated his remains with light magic. With Eclipso defeated, or at least subdued for now, the urge to raise my head and let out a victory roar surged within me. But as I gasped for breath, I realized I didn't even have the energy for such a display. With our battle concluded and no enemy left to fight, my body began to shrink, the effects of my heightened state wearing off. As the ocean's pressure bore down on me, my vision started to fade, and a profound weariness settled into my bones. With each passing moment, the strength drained from my body, leaving me feeling drained and exhausted. I fought to stay conscious, clinging to the last shreds of my resolve, but the darkness closed in around me, enveloping me in its cold embrace. And then, with one final breath, I succumbed to the darkness, slipping into unconsciousness as the ocean's depths claimed me. Blue number 72. As I slowly pried open my eyelids, every muscle in my body seemed to protest, as if they were having a little protest rally of their own. Ugh, did I somehow end up in hell? I mumbled, my voice scratchy and low, as I attempted to raise my hand to massage my pounding head. But halfway through the motion, I froze, my eyes widening in surprise. Instead of my usual skin, my hand was covered in some weird, Dark energy goo. Well, Raven's anti-damage spell is certainly more effective than advertised, I muttered, managing a half-hearted chuckle before flopping back onto the bed with a groan. Guess it can't be hell after all. The bed's too comfy, and I didn't hear elevator music on my way here, I remarked, peering around the room through squinted eyes. The place had serious hotel vibes, like a fancy suite you'd see in those glossy magazines. It was big, bigger than my apartment living room, and the walls were all painted in different shades of blue, giving off a soothing vibe. But here's the kicker: no natural light streaming in. Either it's midnight or they forgot to install windows, I muttered to myself, scratching my head. Finally mustering the energy to sit up, I took a gander at my outfit. Or what used to be my outfit. Instead of my trusty crusader get-up, I was now rocking some kind of funky blue and green tight outfit. Well, I always did wanna cosplay. Guess this is my chance, I chuckled, shaking my head in disbelief. After coming to, it seemed someone had gone through the trouble of hauling my unconscious self to this place. Where exactly? No clue. But dwelling on it wasn't getting me anywhere. Time to do some good OL detective work. With a sigh, I got up from the comfy bed, resolving to explore my new digs. Stepping out of the room, I was greeted by the sight of a humanoid fish. Yes, you read that right, a humanoid fish holding a trident like he was about to give Aquaman a run for his money. Merfolk? Did I get washed up in Atlantis? I muttered, eyeing the fishy figure with a mix of confusion and amusement. The fishman gave me a stern look and knocked his trident on the ground, like he was laying down the law. You're in the illustrious city of Tretanese, to be precise, he declared, his voice dripping with authority. Our patrols found you knocked out cold at the bottom of the sea after going out to investigate a distu bends in the currents. I nodded, taking in the information. Ah, got it. In that case, thanks to you and your water-dwelling squad for the rescue, I replied, offering a grateful smile. Say, any idea how long I've been out for? I inquired, furrowing my brows. The fishy fellow scratched his scaled chin, giving me a once-over. You've been unconscious for about 2 days. Our medics were betting you'd be out like a light for a whole month, given the sorry state you were in, he explained, his tone a mix of curiosity and concern. I couldn't help but chuckle at that. Surviving a deep-sea nap wasn't exactly on my bucket list. Well, guess I'm tougher than I look, I quipped, flashing a grin. On a related note, you guys wouldn't happen to have stumbled upon my trusty sword during your oceanic rescue mission, did you? I asked hopefully. The fishy fellow gave a nod. Your sword and gear are all stashed away in our storage room, he announced, offering to lead the way. Follow me, I'll take you there. Lead the way, good sir, I replied eagerly, returning his nod as we set off on our little expedition. After a few paces, curiosity got the better of me and I piped up. Hey, just a quick thought, aren't you the least bit curious about why I was taking a siesta at the bottom of the sea? I quipped, shooting him a sideways glance. The fishy guard let out a chuckle, his gills flapping in amusement. We are aware of your circumstances. You've vanquished a great evil that represents a threat not only to the surface world but also to Atlantis. And for that, we are grateful, he explained, much to my surprise. Before I could wrap my head around how they knew about my tussle with Eclipso, the guard spilled the beans. 2 of your friends, Blue Beetle and Raven, filled us in on your circumstances after we fished you out of the water, he added. Ah, Blue Beetle and Raven, good looking out, I mused aloud, nodding in acknowledgement. Did Beetle leave me any goodies, perchance? I inquired, hoping for a little surprise waiting for me in the storage room. The guard nodded in confirmation. Indeed he has. You'll find the items he left waiting for you in the storage room, he confirmed, leading the way with a flick of his fin. We made it to the storage room, and true to the fishy soldier's word, my stuff was all there. Most of it looked like it had been through the ringer, but my trusty Stormwalker shoes and the giant Slayer sword were still in good shape, and that was all I needed. The whole Crusader get-up was a goner anyway, not like I planned on playing superhero anytime soon. Then there was that metallic briefcase, the little surprise package Blue Beetle left for me. Popping it open, I couldn't help but smirk at the sight of all those black diamond shards. They practically oozed malice, like they were itching for a fight. Good luck with that, Eclipso, old buddy, I chuckled, giving the briefcase a pat. Oh, and by the way, the penguin says hi, I added, snapping the case shut and tossing it into my shadow storage. I'd deal with those sinister gems later, cleanse em with some light magic, and scrub Eclipso's soul right out of there. But for now, it was mission accomplished on the Eclipso front. And that's the crew I rallied to take on Eclipso. First up was Raven, who saved my bacon with her magic mojo. Then there was Blue Beetle, who begrudgingly teamed up with the Penguin to lend me a hand. With Beetle's gadgets and the Penguin's connections, rounding up those black diamond shards was a cakewalk. So there you have it, my big plan to take down Eclipso. Not exactly a stroke of genius, more like a shopping spree on the system and a few favors called in, but hey, whatever gets the job done, right? After stashing all my gear in the shadow storage, I turned to the fishy soldier with a nod. Thanks again for the save back there, I said, giving him a grateful look. But duty calls, so if you could point me in the direction of the surface, that'd be great. The fishman waved off my gratitude. No need for thanks. I can guide you back whenever you're ready, he replied, and I could sense aid but coming as he trailed off at the end of his sentence. And sure enough, there it was. But King Arthur has requested an audience with you before you head out, he declared. I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. King Arthur? As in, the King of Atlantis? As in Aquaman? The one and only, the fishman confirmed with a nod. So, what'll it be? Will you meet His Majesty? He asked. I let out a sigh. Well, you guys did save my hide, so I guess it's only fair to pay the king a visit, I mused, scratching my head. Lead the way. With a shrug and a sense of curiosity swirling in my mind, I followed the fishman through the winding corridors of Tretanese. As we walked, I couldn't help but marvel at the underwater city's architecture and the hustle and bustle of its aquatic inhabitants. So, any idea what Aquaman wants with me? I asked the fish soldier, breaking the silence. He glanced back at me with a knowing smile. Can't say that I have any, friend. But His Majesty doesn't summon visitors for no reason, he replied cryptically. I chuckled. Guess I'll find out soon enough, I said, shaking my head. Never a dull moment, hey. I honestly had no idea what business Aquaman had with me or why he wanted to see me, but I wouldn't turn down the opportunity to acquaint myself with more DC comic characters. Those points aren't going to harvest themselves, you know? Poseidoni's number 73. As I stood in the awe-inspiring grandeur of Poseidoni's throne room, I had to fight the urge to let my inner country bumpkin and comics geek run wild. I mean, seriously, I was standing in the throne room of Atlantis. The place was dripping with opulence, adorned with golden and blue decor, and supported by towering pillars that reached up to the heavens, or should I say, the ocean's surface. The walls boasted gigantic windows that offered a breathtaking view of the underwater world, teeming with an array of colorful fish darting to and fro. And there, at the end of it all, sat Aquaman himself, perched atop his throne like a king of the sea, shirtless and donning nothing but a pair of snug green pants. Now, I'd originally asked the fishman guard to lead the way, thinking Aquaman would be in Tretanese. But as luck would have it, he was chilling in a whole other underwater city. But hey, no backing out now. Once I said I'd meet him, I couldn't exactly bail, right? Fortunately, Atlanteans had this slick mode of transportation, a sort of magical submarine that could zip through the underwater currents faster than a speeding jet. So, despite the slight detour, I didn't waste too much time getting here. Aquaman's voice reverberated through the throne room, jolting me out of my reverie. Welcome to Atlantis, Micah Foster, he proclaimed grandly, rising from his throne. First, allow me to express my gratitude for dealing with Eclipso on behalf of Atlantis and the entire world, he continued, his demeanor serene as he approached me. I'm the King of Atlantis, but you probably know me better as Aquaman, he introduced himself, extending his hand toward me. But there's no need for formalities, you can call me Arthur. The pleasure is mine, I replied, shaking his hand with a smile. Yup, that's Aquaman for you. Sure, comic book fans like to crack jokes about him, but he's truly something else. Not only is he insanely powerful, but he's also the ruler of an entire submerged continent. He could probably sink the world with a single word if he wanted to. Yet, here he was, as humble and friendly as they come. But hey, this wasn't exactly the time for fanboying. May I ask why you asked to meet me? I inquired as I released Aquaman's hand after a few firm shakes. He gave me a troubled smile. I'm afraid I've called upon you to request a favor, he admitted. I understand you must be exhausted after such a monumental battle, but I must ask nonetheless, he added. I chuckled softly at his words. Just asking isn't a problem, I assured him. I'm willing to hear you out, but I'll be honest, dealing with Eclipso took longer than expected, and I still have some business to attend to in the surface world, so. Aquaman gave a solemn nod. I understand, but we're dealing with a serious problem here, he explained, his expression grave. A species of highly intelligent jellyfish are rallying to invade. They're gearing up for a full-on invasion of Atlantis, and if we don't nip this in the bud, they'll wreak havoc on the surface world too, he added. I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Jellyfish? Seriously? Those squishy, floating blobs? I said, trying to wrap my head around it. How much trouble can they really cause, even with their brains? Aquaman let out a heavy sigh. Yeah, I know it sounds absurd, but these creatures are no joke. They've caused us headaches before, he explained. Back in the day, they took over Tretonis during King Orin's reign. We barely drove them away then, but now they're back with greater numbers and more advanced technology, he added, looking grim. Well, this was unexpected. These jellyfish must be straight out of a vintage comic storyline. I mean, seriously, where did these jellyfish come from? Did someone spill ink in the ocean or what? It's probably the butterfly effect again, but as much as I wanted to take responsibility for my mere presence and clean up this mess, I've got other fish to fry. Livewire's probably wondering where I've been, and I've got a startup to launch, and not a whole lot of time to waste. Besides, I'm sure Atlantis would be fine, even without my help. Aquaman still had his buddies in the league if things go south, after all. I'm sorry, but fighting underwater isn't exactly my forte, I said, shaking my head apologetically. I'm more of a surface dweller, you know? Plus, last time I got my feet wet, I almost became fish food if your people Tretonis didn't bail me out, I added with a wry chuckle. Aquaman shrugged like he was deciding what to have for lunch. There's no need to worry about that, he said, his tone easygoing. Ever hear about how we Atlanteans adapted to underwater life? He asked, as if sharing some insider info. I scratched my head, trying to recall my high school Atlantean history lesson. Oh yeah, some scientist whipped up a special serum, right? Made you guys able to withstand the pressure and breathe underwater. I replied, the light bulb finally flickering in my brain. You're not suggesting you'll slip me a dose of that stuff, are you? I asked, raising an eyebrow so high it almost disappeared into my hairline. Aquaman nodded like it was the most normal thing in the world. Okay, now I was officially confused. You do realize what you're offering, right? I said, my skepticism cranked up to 11. Handing out superpowers isn't exactly the League's style. What's the catch? I pressed, giving him my best I'm onto you look. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm already a walking arsenal with my light magic, shadow control, and all my gadgets. Adding Atlantean powers to the mix? It's like giving rocket boosters to a race car. Anyone would tell you it's unnecessary and potentially explosive. And that totally goes against the whole Justice League ethos. The League wasn't about power grabs, they were all about checks and balances even amongst themselves, making sure no one got too big for their boots. So, Aquaman offering me, an already dangerous individual who isn't affiliated with the League, this serum was like trying to sell sunscreen to a fish fishy as heck. Now, for all you comic book novices out there, you might be scratching your heads wondering why a little serum that lets you breathe underwater is such a big deal. I mean, isn't that just Aquaman's thing? What's the fuss? Well, let me lay it out for you. Aquaman may be the punchline of a few too many jokes, but let's not forget, the guy is no slouch in terms of pure physical attributes, comparable to the best of them. Sure, someone like Superman could probably obliterate Aquaman on the surface with his bullshit ensemble of superpowers, but underwater? That's a completely different ball game. Aquaman's like the heavyweight champ down he, and even OL Supes would have a run for his money. So yeah, getting Aquaman's powers? It's kind of a big deal. Am I offering you anything you can't already gain on your own? Aquaman asked, flashing me a grin that felt colder than a polar bear's toenails. What's that supposed to mean? I shot back, narrowing my eyes at him. It's not exactly a secret that you were not much different from a regular surface world until recently, and yet you managed to take down Eclipso, Aquaman replied, all cool and collected. We don't know how, but it's clear you've got a knack for acquiring powers, he added, dropping the bomb like it was no big deal. I let out a sigh. As I thought, it looked like I couldn't keep my constantly rising strength under wraps forever, not that I thought I'd be exposed this soon. Has it even been more than 2 months since I washed up in this crazy comic book world? We, as in, the Justice League. I raised an eyebrow. Am I right to assume this isn't just your idea but a decision made by the whole gang? I prodded, trying to piece together what was really going on behind the scenes. It was Batman's brainchild, and the 7 founding members of the League agreed to it, Aquaman explained, shedding some light on the situation. Initially, there were some skeptics, but Batman and Superman managed to persuade everyone, and here we are, he added with a shrug. Ah, good old Bruce, always stirring the pot. I couldn't help but wonder what mischief was brewing in that bat brain of his. But hey, no use dwelling on it now. I took a moment to mull it over, weighing the pros and cons, before finally exhaling a defeated sigh. Feels like I'm being played like a fiddle, I muttered. But hey, why the heck not? Count me in, I declared, figuring it'd be foolish to pass on a power-up like this. As for Bruce's ulterior motives, well, he can plot all he wants. What does that have to do with me? I'm shameless enough to take what I can get and tell him to piss off if he came asking for a favor I wasn't willing to give. Meeting number 74. As I slowly emerged from the fog of unconsciousness on the sterile operation table, I couldn't deny the surge of vitality coursing through my veins. Sure, there was a lingering itchiness, but it was overshadowed by this newfound vigor. Before I could even fully appreciate it, a notification from the system rudely interrupted my moment of zen. You have attained the Atlantean physiology. Would you like to incorporate it into the system? I furrowed my brow at the unexpected prompt. Could the system really snag powers from outside its virtual shelves? What's the catch? I wondered, and sure enough, the system had an answer ready. By incorporating the Atlantean physiology into the system, you'd be able to edit and upgrade it using points the same as any purchase from the system's shop. I rolled my eyes internally. No thanks, I thought, dismissing the notification with a mental flick. It irked me that the first time I managed to level up on my own, the system was already trying to get its grubby digital hands on it. Call me paranoid, but something about that felt fishy. I'd always believed that nothing came for free and harbored doubts about the system from day one. I'd even toyed with the idea of cutting ties with it eventually, but it seemed like I'd have to act on that plan sooner than expected. After all, what's given can always be taken away, and I wasn't about to let someone else hold my cards for me. With a sense of purpose driving me forward, I pushed aside my concerns about the system's intentions and focused on the task at hand, helping Aquaman and the Atlanteans win this war. With a determined sigh, I reached for the edge of the bed, intending to rise and face the challenges ahead. But as luck would have it, my attempt to stand ended in an unexpected disaster. My grip on the bed was apparently too strong, causing it to crumble beneath my touch. Before I could recover from the embarrassment, the door swung open, and in walked the familiar fishman soldier I'd encountered back in Tretanese. You're finally awake, I see, he greeted me with a smile, his eyes sweeping over the room. It'll take a while to get used to your new strength. I can take you to Posidonis' training yard to help you get accustomed to it, he offered, moving to assist me up before hesitating, likely remembering my superhuman strength. I couldn't help but chuckle at his cautiousness as I slowly rose to my feet. No need for that, I assured him, retrieving a pen from my shadow storage. I've already got a handle on it, I added, twirling the pen between my fingers to demonstrate my control. With the added strength of the Atlantean physiology, every part of me felt like a potential weapon. And with my skill that made me a master of all things weapon-related, well, let's just say I was feeling pretty unstoppable. Definitely worth the points I'd invested in it. The fishman soldier's eyes widened in awe at my display. Impressive, he murmured, quickly regaining his composure. In that case, I'll take you to meet King Arthur and the generals. They'll soon begin discussing our plan of action, he informed me, gesturing toward the door. Sounds like a plan. The sooner we get this show on the road, the sooner I can wrap things up here and get back to the surface, I replied with a grin, ready to face whatever challenges awaited me. As Aquaman and the Atlantean generals gathered around a large, intricately carved table in the war room of Posidonis, tension hung thick in the air. The threat of the highly intelligent jellyfish army loomed large, and every strategy, every decision, could mean the difference between victory and defeat for Atlantis. The generals, their expressions stern and focused, debated fiercely, voices rising and falling as they discussed tactics and contingencies. Aquaman, sitting at the head of the table, listened intently, occasionally interjecting with his own insights and suggestions. Just as the discussion reached a critical point, the door to the war room creaked open, and Micah was ushered in by the fisherman soldier who had accompanied him earlier. The general's eyes flickered with irritation at the sight of the surface dweller intruding on their meeting, but they remained silent, choosing to ignore his presence rather than address it. Micah, unfazed by the chilly reception, took a seat at the far end of the table, his expression neutral as he observed the proceedings. He knew he wasn't exactly welcome here, but he had a stake in this fight too, whether the Atlanteans liked it or not. Aquaman, noticing the general's discomfort but choosing to respect their silence, cleared his throat and addressed the room. "Gentlemen, I understand that Micah's presence may be unexpected," he began, casting a glance in Micah's direction. "But rest assured, he's here to aid us in any way he can. His abilities would prove invaluable in this battle." One of the generals couldn't resist voicing his skepticism. "So long as the surface dweller doesn't muck things up and follows orders, I suppose we can tolerate his company," he remarked, his tone dripping with barely concealed scorn. Aquaman shot the general a pointed look, silently reprimanding him for his rudeness. Yet, the general remained defiant, meeting Aquaman's gaze with a willful stare of his own. Micah, however, merely chuckled at the general's snide comment, his laid-back demeanor undisturbed by the hostility directed his way. When Aquaman opened the floor for suggestions, Micah seized the opportunity to speak up, much to the general's chagrin. Ignoring their disapproving glares, he posed a question that seemed to catch them off guard. "What's the endgame here, folks? What do you hope to achieve?" Micah asked, his tone sincere and direct. The generals exchanged incredulous looks, clearly taken aback by Micah's audacity. One of them scoffed, his expression dripping with condescension. "What else but victory would we aim for?" he retorted, regarding Micah as if he were a naive child. Micah, however, remained unfazed by the general's derision, his grin widening as he offered his perspective. "It's not about winning or losing the war," he explained calmly. "It's about how you want to win this war. Will you settle for just shooing the jellyfish people away? Wipe them out for good? Maybe teach 'em a lesson they won't soon forget, make 'em think twice before invading again," he suggested, his gaze steady and unwavering. Despite the general's skepticism, Micah's words hung in the air, forcing them to ponder the true scope of their ambitions in the impending conflict. Aquaman shook his head firmly, his voice carrying the weight of his authority. "Extermination is off the table. As king of the oceans and seas, those jellyfish may be discontent with my rule, but they're still my subjects, and I'm bound to protect them," he declared, dismissing any notions of annihilation with a wave of his hand. One of the generals let out a derisive snort. "Even if we wanted to wipe them out, it's not like we have the means to do so," he remarked, shaking his head ruefully. "With their sheer numbers, our best hope is a Pyrrhic victory, pushing them back but sustaining heavy losses in the process," he added, his expression grave. Micah's grin widened as he addressed the skeptical general. "Ah, but who's to say you can't secure a decisive win with minimal casualties?" "I definitely didn't," he interjected, his tone confident. "Sure, the jellyfish might outnumber you, but how many of them would it take to beat one Atlantean soldier? Quality trumps quantity any day of the week," he quipped, raising an eyebrow challengingly. The general's frown deepened at Micah's remark. "War isn't as simple as you make it out to be, surface dweller," he retorted, his tone tinged with irritation. "There are countless variables to consider: environmental factors, troop morale, battle formations. After careful deliberation, we've determined that a Pyrrhic victory is our best bet," he explained. "We know the capabilities of our soldiers better than anyone, after all," he concluded with a note of finality in his tone. Micah chuckled at the general's assertion, lifting his hand with a smirk playing on his lips. "Can't argue with you there about your soldiers' capabilities," he conceded, his voice casual yet confident as he summoned a shimmering orb of magic light into his palm. "But do you know my own capabilities?" he continued, his words trailing off as the orb dispersed, scattering into a cascade of radiant specks that enveloped everyone in the war room with their ethereal glow. "If you were aware that I can temporarily enhance everyone's strength, speed, and durability twofold with my magic," Micah posed, his tone laced with intrigue, "would you still insist that a Pyrrhic victory is the best you can aim for?" Surface number 75. Placing my foot atop the crowned head of an oversized jellyfish, I retrieved my sword from its defeated form and sent the creature floating into the murky depths below. Their king is down, and most of their forces have met their end, I declared, leaning casually on the hilt of my giant slayer blade. Looks like that's a wrap for this little underwater skirmish, I remarked, pivoting to face Aquaman and the squad of Atlantean royal guards at his side. Indeed, and we owe it all to your light magic for securing such a victory with minimal losses, Aquaman acknowledged with a weary grin. My pure-blooded generals will probably be too embarrassed to even show their faces after doubting you, he added with a rueful chuckle. I shrugged nonchalantly. Can't blame em for doubting a surface dweller in an underwater brawl. We're not exactly renowned for our aquatic warfare skills, I quipped, slipping my sword into the shadows of my storage. But hey, war's over, and I've done my part. Time for me to resurface, I announced, casting a glance upwards to the darkened expanse above, hinting at the world beyond the waves. Aquaman arched an eyebrow inquisitively. Heading out already? He questioned. We've got a banquet planned to honor the fallen and celebrate our victory. I'm sure many of my people would be eager to meet you, he added, the invitation hanging in the air. I shot Aquaman a playful grin. So, any stunning Atlantean beauties in the mix? I teased, raising an eyebrow in anticipation. Aquaman chuckled heartily. Oh, I'd say there's quite a few admirers eager to meet our esteemed war hero, he replied with a wide grin. Ladies tend to swoon for a man with a few heroic tales to tell, he added, clapping me firmly on the shoulder. His slap, though well-intentioned, shattered my guardian veil barrier like glass and nearly popped my shoulder out of its socket. Sure, the Atlantean serum had beefed up my physique, but Aquaman still had the upper hand in the strength department. I rolled my eyes, rubbing my sore shoulder. Can't say that I'm not tempted, I muttered wryly. But duty calls, and I've got plenty of unfinished business topside, I explained, waving off the idea of a romantic rendezvous with a chuckle. Aquaman sighed good-naturedly, shaking his head. Stubborn as ever, Micah, he remarked, closing his eyes momentarily. With a subtle gesture, a resounding call echoed through the depths, summoning an oversized dolphin from the shadows. This little guy will escort you back home safely. Take care, and drop by whenever you get the chance, Aquaman offered, extending his hand toward me. I grinned, shaking his hand firmly. You know the drill, Arthur. If you ever need a hand, just give me a shout. But remember, my heroics come with a price tag, I quipped, shooting him a wink. Until next time, then, I concluded, releasing his hand and grasping the dolphin's dorsal fin, ready to ride the currents back to the surface. Good old Lady Liberty, I muttered, savoring the taste of fresh surface air as I swam toward the shore. Thanks for the ride, buddy. Feel free to head back now, I added, turning to give the oversized dolphin a grateful pat on its sleek, glistening flank. With a joyful squeal, it dove beneath the waves, disappearing into the vast expanse of the ocean. Turning my gaze back to the land, I propelled myself through the water until my feet finally met the sandy shore. Home sweet home! I sighed contentedly, relishing the feeling of solid ground beneath my feet. Stretching out lazily, I paused as I noticed the curious stares of a few beachgoers nearby. Glancing down at myself, I quickly realized why I was attracting attention. It was winter, after all, and here I was, standing on the beach in nothing but a pair of pants, dripping with cold ocean water. It must have been quite the sight. But it wasn't just my attire that caught people's eyes. My body had undergone some serious changes during my underwater adventures. The Atlantean serum had not only granted me the ability to breathe underwater and withstand the ocean's crushing pressure but had also sculpted my muscles into a form that could make bodybuilders green with envy. I wasn't overly bulky, nor was I too lean, just the perfect balance of strength and aesthetics. Furthermore, after spending so much time fighting underwater, I've grown a considerably scruffy beard that, coupled with my long hair, would attract anyone's attention. But that's enough about the changes in my looks. After spending so much time submerged in the depths, navigating the ocean's currents, and straining my muscles under the pressure at the bottom of the sea, my strength and agility had reached new heights. Walking on land felt like a breeze compared to the weight of the water pressing down on me. Oh well, my gains were definitely not small this time around. With a shrug and a smirk, I brushed off the stairs and continued my leisurely stroll along the beach, feeling more at home in my own skin than ever before. Better give Azrael a call, see what's happened while I was away. Strolling through the park in his civilian attire, Azrael couldn't help but halt in his tracks at the bizarre scene unfolding before him. There, seated on a bench ahead, was a pale young man with disheveled hair and a scruffy beard, engaged in what appeared to be a heated argument with an oversized rat perched beside him. "What the hell are you talking about, rat?" the young man snapped, his tone laced with irritation. "Ted's place isn't some random alley trash can. It's even better than my apartment," he continued, jabbing an accusing finger in the rat's direction, eliciting a series of indignant squeaks from the rodent. "In the first place, I haven't been goofing off these past months. I've been fighting a bloody war while you were busy chowing down on cheese in Ted's pad," the young man exclaimed, as if deciphering the rat's squeaks. "So what if you were bored for a couple of months?" he added defiantly. In response, the rat emitted an angry squeal and lunged at the young man's outstretched finger. "Go ahead and bite all you want, rat. Not even an artillery rocket could scratch me now," the young man boasted, though his bravado was short-lived. As the rat's teeth sank deeper, his face contorted, turning blue, and he began flailing his arms in a panicked frenzy. "Yow! All right, you win. Just let go before you chomp my finger off, you little bastard," the young man exclaimed, causing the rat to finally release its grip, emitting a satisfied chitter. Having seen enough of the peculiar sight, Azrael cleared his throat to grab the young man's attention. "Is that you, Micah?" he called out as he approached the bench. Micah, the young man, turned around, his face lighting up in a grin. "Oh? It's only been a few months, Paul. Don't tell me you've already forgotten this charming mug of mine," he quipped with a chuckle. Azrael shook his head in amusement. "I'm not ungrateful enough to forget a face that saved me from my own demons," he remarked. "Though you've changed quite a bit, if it weren't for your furry friend here, I wouldn't have recognized you," he added, gesturing toward Ratigan. Micah shrugged casually. 2 months of underwater warfare can do that, mate. "I reckon it's time for a trim," he mused, scratching his head. "Anyway, how'd things go on your end? Sorted out those issues I left you with?" he asked, raising an eyebrow with genuine interest. Azrael nodded, his expression confirming his success. "Took a bit of elbow grease, but everything's shipshape," he replied. "Livewire's out and about, buzzing with her new talk show. I've made sure she's towing the line as per your instructions, and her star power's skyrocketing faster than a SpaceX launch," he explained with a grin. Micah's smile stretched wider at the news. "You've done well. Now, it's just a matter of keeping an eye on her and finding more avenues for her to flaunt her powers and fame. Keep her on the straight and narrow," he said, nodding in satisfaction. "What about Arnold Weskier and my startup?" Michael leaned back in his chair, a satisfied grin spreading across his face as he listened to Azrael's updates. "So, Albert Weskier's on board, hey?" he mused, nodding in approval. "Well, as long as he's eager to turn his life around, it's a risk worth taking." Azrael raised an eyebrow, a hint of skepticism in his expression. "Offering him a boatload of cash might have been a tad reckless, but hey, it's your call," he remarked, chuckling softly. Micah waved off the concern with a nonchalant shrug. "Time will tell if it pays off," he replied, his tone betraying his confidence. "Now, on to the startup. How's the paperwork coming along?" Azrael's gaze shifted to a nearby stack of documents. "All sorted and ready for your signature," he confirmed. "But remember, getting the manufacturing and sales licenses won't be a walk in the park. You'll need to prove the safety and efficacy of your products." Micah nodded thoughtfully. "Got it. Leave that part to me," he said, rising from his seat. Ratigan, his trusty companion, perched on his shoulder, adding an air of eccentricity to the scene. "I'll take some time off, tie up loose ends, and then we'll kick things into gear," Micah declared with a grin, his mind already racing with plans. "Thanks for all your hard work, Paul. I owe you one." With a wave, Micah bid Azrael farewell and strolled out of the room, a man with a mission and a startup on the horizon. Handling business number 76. Stepping into Livewire's studio, I was greeted by a crackling bolt of electricity that narrowly missed my head. "Is that any way to welcome your boss?" I quipped, dodging the stray arc with a raised eyebrow. Livewire shot me a defiant glare, her hand crackling with energy. "You're not my boss, Micah," she retorted, her tone tinged with defiance. "If anything, I should be calling the shots around here." I couldn't help but chuckle at her bravado. "Sure, boss lady, if you can offer me the same things I've given you, I teased, listing off her newfound freedom, a studio, and a chance at stardom. With an eye roll, Livewire brushed off my comment. Fine, whatever, she muttered, clearly unimpressed. But seriously, where have you been? She demanded, crossing her arms expectantly. Here and there, you know how it is, I replied casually, flashing her a grin. But enough about me. How's my superstar doing? Keeping on the straight and narrow? I inquired, giving her a pointed look. Livewire rolled her eyes at my comment. If you consider hacking into social networks to boost my show as staying on the straight and narrow, then sure, she retorted with a casual shrug. But besides that, everything's running smoothly, she added, a hint of pride in her voice. Chuckling, I leaned back, unfazed. Hey, as long as nobody's getting hurt and you're not getting caught, it's fair game, I remarked, waving off any concerns. Besides, it's not like we're not investing in promotions anyway. You're just taking matters into your own hands, I pointed out. Livewire nodded in agreement. Exactly, she confirmed, eyeing me curiously. But seriously, what's with the new look? You've changed a lot since I last saw you, she observed, taking note of my altered appearance. With a nonchalant shrug, I downplayed it. Oh, nothing major. Just a little underwater skirmish at the bottom of the sea, I replied casually. But why the sudden interest in my appearance? Starting to fall for me? I teased, raising an eyebrow playfully. Livewire shot me a mischievous grin and took a step closer. Maybe I am, she teased back, lightly tracing her finger over my chest. You're kinda of my type now, she said, her tone playful. I chuckled and gently pushed her hand away. Careful now, that's bordering on sexual harassment. You don't want me calling HR, do you? I quipped with a smirk. You're no fun, Livewire said in a pouty tone. But seriously, did you just want to flirt, or is there something important you want to discuss? She asked, getting down to business as she sat behind her desk. Bit of both, I admitted, taking a seat. Your talk show's been great with you yapping about this and that and all, but we need to think about shaking things up before it gets stale, I suggested, shooting her a meaningful look. Livewire shot me a skeptical look. Seriously? You think my electrifying presence isn't enough to keep the audience engaged? She retorted, her tone tinged with disbelief. I maintained my pointed gaze, waiting for her to come around. Eventually, she relented with a sigh. Okay, I'll admit, I'm starting to run out of material. And trash-talking Superman after he vouched for me just feels wrong, she admitted begrudgingly, her tone tinged with resignation. Nodding in understanding, I suggested an alternative. Ever thought about having guests on the show? I proposed. Livewire's expression shifted to one of disdain. Oh, please. I've had requests pouring in from every Tom, Dick, and Harry wanting a spot on the show. She explained. But it's all just a bunch of suits trying to promote their stuff or the occasional celebrity plugging their latest movie. Nothing remotely interesting, Livewire dismissed with a scoff. Well, we'll just have to find an intriguing guest to shake things up, won't we? I countered, a glint of excitement in my eyes. Livewire's expression softened, indicating she was considering the idea. I already have a couple of people in mind, but it's too early to announce anything, I revealed. In the meantime, we need to hype up this mystery guest in the upcoming episodes so we can deliver a spectacular reveal when the time comes, I concluded with a grin, eager to see how she'd react. I'm guessing you won't tell me who to expect even if I ask. Livewire queried, a frown etching her brow. I responded with a nonchalant shrug. Acting all mysterious, seriously, you're not impressing anyone, she remarked, her irritation evident. I grinned at her reaction. But why the hell not trusting you has brought me this far, so I'll leave it to you. You better not disappoint, she warned, her tone laced with a glare. Chuckling, I assured her, I wouldn't dare. Standing up from my seat, I stretched casually. I've still got some business to tend to and people to visit, so I'll take my leave, I announced, making my way towards the exit. Livewire didn't bother to see me out. Don't let the door hit you on your way out, she quipped, a hint of amusement in her voice. As the gates of the Wayne mansion swung open, I was greeted by Alfred Pennyworth, standing at the door with a quizzical expression. Welcome, young friend. Pray tell, who might you be, and how did you find yourself here? He inquired, his demeanor tinged with suspicion. I flashed a grin, trying to jog his memory. I actually gave you a heads up before arriving, don't you remember me? I prompted, arching an eyebrow at his puzzled expression. We crossed paths some time back in that place down under, remember? I'm the chap with the rat. I continued, gesturing towards Ratigan, who peeked out from behind my shoulder and gave Alfred a friendly wave. Recognition flickered across Alfred's face. Ah, Mr. Foster, he acknowledged, nodding in realization. My apologies for the oversight, you've undergone quite the transformation, he remarked, eyeing me with curiosity. Yeah, well, I've been hearing that a lot lately, I quipped, chuckling at the observation. Anyway, is Bruce around? I interjected, steering the conversation. Alfred nodded. Indeed, he is, he confirmed, stepping aside to usher me in. Please, do come in. Allow me to escort you to Master Bruce, he offered, gesturing for me to follow him inside. After a brief stroll through the Wayne Mansion's labyrinthine halls, I finally arrived at the reception hall. There, I found Bruce Wayne seated comfortably in an elegant chair, surrounded by an array of snacks and steaming beverages on a nearby table. Alfred, the ever-gracious butler, announced his departure with a promise of refreshments. I'll leave you here to chat with Master Bruce at your leisure. Excuse me, he said before vanishing into the mansion's depths without waiting for a response. Bruce acknowledged my presence with a nod. You're early. Take a seat, he invited, gesturing to an empty chair nearby. I complied, settling into the seat with a smirk. Shouldn't you be asking who I am and why I'm here? I teased, raising an eyebrow. Bruce's lips curled into a knowing smile. Your appearance may have changed, but the way you speak and carry yourself haven't, he remarked coolly. Besides, Alfred wouldn't allow just anyone to wander in without my consent, he added, waving off any concerns. I let out a sigh, feigning exasperation. Of course, the world's greatest detective, how could I forget? I remarked, rolling my eyes in mock disbelief. With a subtle yet unmistakable smirk, Bruce Wayne assumed his persona as he glanced at me, swiftly transitioning from casual conversation to more pressing matters. So, what brings you to my humble abode? Are you ready to take the reins of our little project? He inquired, his tone carrying a hint of seriousness. Not until I have the capital to buy it from you, I replied, shaking my head. But I did come with a business proposal, I continued, a spark of excitement evident in my voice. Bruce's interest piqued as he raised an eyebrow. Oh? And what might that be? He asked, leaning forward slightly in anticipation. With a mischievous grin, I reached into my inner pocket. A universal cure for cancer, I announced, presenting a small bottle of pills without labels. I can't hog all the glory to myself, so I thought I'd share, I added with a chuckle, tossing the bottle to Bruce. He caught it effortlessly, inspecting the contents with a thoughtful expression. Very well, he replied simply, much to my surprise. Aren't you going to question the efficacy of these pills? Or inquire about why I brought them to you? I asked, eyebrows raised in disbelief. Bruce chuckled lightly, his demeanor unperturbed. Naturally, my team will conduct tests on these pills. There's no point in questioning their effectiveness when we can simply verify it, he explained, a hint of amusement in his tone. And I trust that you wouldn't bring a counterfeit product to me. You know how cautious I can be. He added with a shake of his head. Dealing with smart people is a pain in the ass. Number 77. Flying away from the Wayne Mansion, I couldn't help but feel like I'd just been outsmarted by the ultimate smooth operator. Dealing with Bruce Wayne is like trying to outwit a chess grandmaster with a deck of Uno cards. I mean, seriously, the guy sees through my plans faster than I can say universal cure for cancer. When I pitched him the idea of teaming up on the cure, I wasn't feeling particularly charitable. I've got the cure ready to roll, so why share the profits with Gotham's richest playboy? Well, because capitalism and red tape, that's why. As it turns out, you can't just rock up with a miracle drug and expect everyone to jump on board. Nah, there are hoops to jump through, boxes to tick, and all kinds of bureaucratic rigmarole to navigate. So there I am, hoping Bruce's company can cut through the red tape like a hot knife through butter. And wouldn't you know it, he catches on faster than a cat on a laser pointer. Though I might not know the intricacies of navigating the medicine market, Bruce Wayne, with his multi-billion company and its many branches, would be an expert. Furthermore, he had more than a subsidiary specialized in producing medicine with all the know-how that comes with them, making him the ideal partner. So, here's the deal, teaming up with Bruce wasn't just about cutting through the red tape. Sure, I needed him to fast-track the testing phase and all that bureaucratic nonsense, but there was more to it than that. I was counting on the Wayne name to lend some serious street cred to our little cure. People see the Wayne label on a product, and they automatically trust it. It's like magic. Once folks start popping our miracle pills and seeing the results, they'll be singing our praises from the rooftops. And hey, that means they'll also trust my company, no strings attached. In the future, I wouldn't have to rely on Bruce and his company. But of course, I wasn't there to ask for a handout without offering anything in return. I offered Bruce a healthy slice of the pie, because hey, the guy deserves it. But let's be real, he probably would have helped out even if there wasn't a penny in it for him. That's just how he rolls. But I've also got my pride, you know? Here's the kicker though, I've got another reason for cozying up to Bruce, call it a gut feeling. Heck, call me paranoid even, but I can totally picture some folks getting their panties in a twist over a universal cancer cure. I mean, chemo and all that medical jazz? It's big business, and some people won't be thrilled about losing their cash cow. It sounds like a cheesy movie plot, but in this crazy world, you never know. So, here's the scoop, Bruce took my proposal hook, line, and sinker. You'd think I'd be over the moon, right? Wrong. I'm fuming, and here's why, the guy saw through my whole plan like he had X-ray vision or something. And to add insult to injury, he had the nerve to call me out on it with this smug look that screamed, "I've got you, buddy." Now, don't get me wrong, I've always prided myself on being pretty sharp. But compared to Bruce Wayne, I might as well be using crayons. It's a bitter pill to swallow, let me tell you. But hey, I'm not one to back down from a challenge. Sooner or later, I'll have my moment to outsmart that smug son of a gun. Just wait and see. In a clandestine chamber shrouded in shadows, Lex Luthor and Vandal Savage sat across from each other, their eyes locked on the intricate dance of chess pieces. The room was adorned with ancient artifacts, hinting at the wisdom and experience of its occupants. "Why the sudden resurgence, Vandal?" Lex inquired, his voice laced with intrigue as he made his move on the chessboard. "Could it be because the UN has put Amanda Waller on trial?" Vandal's lips curled into a sly smile, his gaze steady as he considered Lex's query. "Ah, Amanda Waller," he mused, his tone tinged with amusement. "She has indeed been a thorn in my side. But my return is not merely a response to her antics. It's about seizing the opportune moment, the stars aligning perfectly for my grand ambition." With a calculated stroke, Vandal maneuvered his queen into position. "Checkmate in 3. He said, rising gracefully from his seat as he prepared to take his leave, his aura exuding confidence and power. As Vandal made his exit, Lex's sharp intellect went into overdrive. His eyes flickered with a newfound determination as he surveyed the chessboard, analyzing every move and counter-move. Moving a pawn, he placed it at the board's epicenter, changing the dynamics of the game. "You've underestimated the complexity of the game too much, old friend," Lex murmured to himself, a smirk playing on his lips. "A single piece has escaped your notice." Lounging comfortably in my room, I flicked on the TV to catch up on the latest news. The familiar face of a news anchor filled the screen, her voice echoing through the room as she delved into the latest headlines. "Breaking news today as the trial of Amanda Waller by the UN continues to draw international attention," the news lady announced, her tone grave as she recounted the unfolding drama. "Investigations have unearthed shocking details surrounding the destruction of Parador, with reports suggesting that the island's dictatorial leader resorted to detonating nuclear bombs after a covert team sent by the US government backed him into a corner." I leaned in closer, my interest piqued by the unfolding saga. The anchor continued, her words painting a vivid picture of political intrigue and global condemnation. "Amidst mounting accusations and finger-pointing, many countries have placed blame squarely on the US, condemning their alleged involvement in the Parador incident," she reported, her expression serious as she relayed the gravity of the situation. In response, the US government has taken the unprecedented step of handing over Amanda Waller and Sarge Steele for trial, holding them accountable for their purported roles in the catastrophe. I couldn't help but shake my head at the tangled web of international politics and power struggles playing out on the screen. Sure enough, Eclipso's schemes run deep. Blowing up an entire island and leaving it looking like a nuclear wasteland, talk about overkill. Finding any evidence linking Waller or the US to this mess would be like finding a needle in a haystack, except the haystack is on fire and glowing with radiation. In other words, it should have been impossible to find any evidence implicating Waller or the US government in the nuclear wasteland that was once Parador. Unless someone made sure such evidence could be easily found, that is. Eclipso must have thought he'd hit the jackpot by wiping out Waller and her gang along with Parador. But surprise, surprise, he had to run into me. Though I managed to save the shadow fighters, I've got a feeling Waller's not getting off scot-free. I can't imagine her talking her way out of this one, that's for sure. As for Eclipso, all his plans don't mean shit now. His evil spirits locked up tight in those dusty black diamonds chilling in my shadow storage. I couldn't help but feel bad for all those people in Parador, though. They paid the ultimate price for Eclipso's twisted game. If I ever get the chance, I'll make him suffer. In any case, I'll get around to wiping his sorry existence once I have some free time sooner or later, so it doesn't really matter. Right now, my top priority is beefing up Livewire's show with some killer guests. And who better to spice things up than Poison Ivy? If I can convince her to grace us with her presence, we'll have the whole city talking. Tracking down Ivy won't be a walk in the park, and convincing her will be even more difficult, but hey, nothing worth doing ever is, and it's not like I had anything better to do anyway. With Weskier holding down the fort at the company and Mr. Freeze thawing out his wife after curing her, I've got some time to spare. Speaking of Freeze, did I mention he cracked the code and found a cure for his wife, all thanks to the Father Box? Well, he did, and guess who got full rights to the universal cancer cure he came up with? Me, stupid. On to the grinder number 78. Strolling through the majestic Gotham Park, I couldn't shake off this eerie feeling of déjà vu. Despite never setting foot here before, it felt like I'd clocked in hours wandering its paths. In the distance, I spotted a gloomy young man engaged in what looked like a losing battle with a rugged middle-aged fellow. They seemed locked in combat, but with a blink, they vanished into thin air, leaving me questioning my sanity. Hallucination or ghostly sparring partners? I muttered, scratching my head as Radigan shot me a skeptical glance. Apparently, he missed the show. Maybe I'm just seeing things. Let's not dwell on the weirdness. I'll just have a talk with Poison Ivy and get out of here before seeing things becomes the norm for me, I declared, steering away from the main trail and diving deeper into the park. As I mentioned, I didn't come here for a stroll but to find Poison Ivy. How did I know she was here? Courtesy of the Penguin, Gotham's most reliable information hub. Sure, he's a bit pricey, but when it comes to solid leads, the Penguin's your bird. After several minutes of strolling, I stumbled upon a dilapidated greenhouse, overrun by creeping vines and tangled foliage, as if it had been abandoned for decades. Stepping into the clearing, I unwittingly drew the attention of the shady characters lurking around the area. With their heavy attire, caps, and shades concealing their features, they hardly looked like friendly neighborhood folks. As I pondered their motives, one of them, oozing menace, advanced toward me. You! The shady fellow barked, positioning himself at a calculated distance close enough to intimidate yet far enough to deter any sudden moves. Yep, these guys are definitely not simple. Who are you, and what the hell are you doing here? He demanded, his hand inching toward a concealed weapon within his coat. Flashing him my trademark grin, I raised my hands in mock surrender. Would you believe me if I said I'm just talking a scenic stroll? I quipped, bracing myself for whatever came next. The guy shot me a steely glare, his silence hanging heavy in the air, before suddenly lunging at me with an expandable baton clutched tightly in his grip, clearly aiming for my head. As the man lunged at me with his baton, I caught his wrist with a grin, channeling my inner action hero. With a flick of my wrist and a bit of martial arts finesse, both man and baton were spinning in the air. With one hand, I took the baton and, with the other, punched its owner, sending him flying away. He crashed into a tree with a satisfying thud, a symphony of curses from his friends following his descent. Who's next? I challenged, brandishing the baton and extending it to its full length like I was about to audition for a superhero movie. The other shady characters exchanged nervous glances, realizing they might have picked the wrong guy to mess with. As they fumbled for their guns and opened fire, I couldn't help but roll my eyes. No hesitation at all, what the hell have I gotten myself into? I grumbled inwardly, activating my trusty Stormwalker shoes for a speed boost. With bullets flying around me like disgruntled bees, I danced through the chaos, weaving between shots with the grace of a caffeinated ninja. Dodging bullets was becoming a habit, but hey, beats catching them with my teeth. I waited for the first goon to run out of ammo before I decided to pay him a visit up close and personal, zipping over like that one uncle once he finds out your parents aren't home. As I materialized before the man, he swung his pistol at my head, his actions speaking more loudly about his combat experience than any word can. Quick on the draw, I deflected his strike with the baton, making him drop the gun like a hot potato. I was about to give him a friendly tap on the noggin to send him into dreamland, but a glance at his buddy's trigger-happy fingers made me think twice. Let's see how far they're willing to go. Instead of delivering the knockout blow, I looped an arm around his neck and positioned him as a human shield, a move straight out of an action movie playbook. The shady crew didn't hesitate to open fire, clearly intent on turning their erstwhile friend and me into Swiss cheese targets. Well, seems like your pals aren't big on teamwork, I quipped, flashing a grin at my unwilling bodyguard. Summoning a swirling barrier of shadows, I intercepted the hail of bullets before they could turn him into a pincushion. Experienced, ruthless, and packing heat, what a pleasant punch, I mused inwardly, noting their readiness to ventilate their own buddy without a second thought. After giving the guy in my grip a solid headbutt and a one-way ticket to dreamland, I tossed him aside for later interrogation. Time to clean up and get to the bottom of this mess, I muttered, eyeing the remaining shady characters, who seemed about as shaken as a tree in a gentle breeze. Pouring a generous splash of water on the thug's face, I couldn't help but chuckle as he sputtered back to reality, grumbling all the while. No. Hate school. Got no friends. Don't wanna go. He mumbled, clearly still in the fog of unconsciousness. A solid slap brought him back to the present, his eyes darting around with cautious suspicion before he clamped down on something hidden in his mouth as soon as our gazes met. With a silent challenge in his gaze, he waited for the shoe to drop, but to his surprise, nothing happened. Cyanide Bill in the tooth filling, hey? Classic move, I quipped, pulling the poison pellet that was in his mouth with a turn of my hand. The thug's expression shifted from confusion to shock in an instant. You might as well just end it now. I won't spill anything, even if you put me through the ringer, he spat out defiantly, his jaw set with stubborn resolve. I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at his unwavering defiance. Not even flinching at death and torture, hey? I remarked with a wry grin. After today's botched job, someone else will finish the job if you don't, he retorted, his tone as firm as his grip on reality. And as for torture, been there, done that. You won't break me, he declared matter-of-factly, bracing himself for the worst. Fair enough, if you've been trained to endure the training, then regular people certainly can't make you talk. I conceded with a nod, rising to my feet and extending my hand. With a subtle gesture, shadows converged and enveloped the thug's frame, wrapping him in a cocoon of darkness. But who the hell said I was a regular person? As the shadows encased the thug, leaving only his eyes visible, I couldn't resist a mischievous grin. You know, spending the last couple of months at the bottom of the sea taught me some fascinating things, I mused, pacing around him as he squirmed in his shadowy prison. Take the immense pressure down there, for example, and its effect on the human body. I trailed off, watching his confusion deepen. When it comes to toughness, I'm not worse than the strongest Atlantean warriors, but let me tell you, it felt like I had a mountain sitting on my chest for the first week. Got used to it eventually, though, I chuckled, settling down beside him. Now, I can't replicate that pressure with my shadows, but a fraction of it. Piece of cake, I continued, shooting him a pointed look. One little squeeze, and poof. You're instant paste, I sighed dramatically. But that's no fun. What if I dialed up the pressure bit by bit? I teased, putting on an expression of relishing the thug's fear. Will your bones crack like twigs? Will your insides burst like overripe fruit? Or maybe your eyes will pop out like a cartoon character? I pondered aloud, my grin widening at his growing discomfort. Honestly, I'm just as curious as you are to find out, I chuckled darkly. As the thug's thrashing reached a crescendo, I raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. Oh? Seems like you're rearing to go. Your dedication to the cause of science is truly inspiring, I remarked, closing my hand slowly, and adding just a hint of pressure. It was less of a squeeze and more like an over-enthusiastic bear hug, but the mental image I'd painted in his head with my words seemed to do the trick, sending him into a frenzy of thrashing and muffled cries. Oh? Got something to share with the class now? I quipped, flashing him a wicked grin as I peeled away the shadows shrouding his mouth. Chapter 79, Speech 100 Number 79. Author's note: this is something I wanted to add at the end of the previous chapter, but I kinda forgot. Anyway, in the last chapter, there was something like a vision in the park about a young man and an older man sparring near a tree. It's not something important or related to the story in any way, so don't overthink. It's just a simple reference. If you get it then that's fine, if you don't, that's also fine. Figures. I grumbled under my breath, processing the thug's words with a nod. Well, no surprises there. You can catch up on your beauty sleep now, I added, giving him a light tap on the noggin to send him back to dreamland. It seemed I had picked the wrong time to pay a visit to Poison Ivy. According to Mr. Unwilling Source over here, he and his crew were hired to hunt down Poison Ivy, or so their mysterious employer instructed them. They were nothing more than a ragtag bunch of thugs and mercenaries with no knowledge of each other or their handler beyond the orders they received. Their mysterious benefactor would sporadically pop in, doling out missions and doling out hefty paychecks. Apparently, despite completing several missions, our friend had never once crossed paths with the same crew twice, always finding himself surrounded by fresh faces. The logistics, equipment, and planning were all handled by, well, the elusive handler, of course, leaving them with one simple job: keep quiet and do as they were told. Curious, I probed for details on how they intended to capture Poison Ivy with nothing but guns and blunt instruments. His response? A shrug and a clueless look. As it turns out, the thugs stationed inside the compound were equipped differently and given separate directives for snagging Ivy. Meanwhile, the crew outside were left to play watchdog. Funny how even the watchdogs were more like well-trained hounds, not nosing around where they shouldn't be. It makes me wonder what kind of big bad wolves they've got on the inside. Still, a tough situations just mean more bragging rights once I kick butt and take names and get Ivy in my debt, so I wasn't complaining. There was no point overthinking it, I'll have to roll with the punches. With that in mind, I strutted into the greenhouse. As I drew closer, the greenery seemed to come alive, but I shrugged it off. It's probably just Poison Ivy's green magic doing its thing. Not really my problem, anyway. Stepping through the entrance, I had to pause and take it all in. The greenhouse was way bigger on the inside than it looked from the outside, more like a mansion than a greenhouse. But here's the kicker: the walls, the furniture, heck, even the floors were all made of plants, like some kind of organic architecture showpiece. Lost in the strange scene before me, my enhanced senses suddenly flared, and I had to step aside to dodge as a crossbow bolt, lighting quickly and almost entirely silent, came flying at me from the darkness. Whoa there, Sneaky Pete! I quipped, squinting into the shadows where the attack originated. Sneak attacks in the dark? Not cool, dude. Show yourself like a proper villain. Responding to my call-out, a figure emerged from the darkness. Clad in sleek combat gear and sporting a menacing black and orange mask, he casually tossed aside his crossbow. Impressive reflexes, he remarked, eyeing me up and down with a hint of amusement. I narrowed my eyes, instantly recognizing the figure. Deathstroke. Are you part of the goon squad trying to nab Poison Ivy? I asked, not bothering to hide my disdain. You got it, Deathstroke confirmed, drawing the katana strapped to his back. But I'm just here to keep things quiet for, let's say the next 7 minutes and 35 seconds, he added, checking the time on his digital wristwatch. With his katana glinting menacingly, Deathstroke took a deliberate step forward, and I instinctively raised my palm in a halting gesture. Hold it right there, I commanded. There's no need for us to resort to violence. Deathstroke paused, his expression betraying a hint of confusion. And why's that? He inquired, his tone laced with skepticism. Well, I want to rendezvous with Poison Ivy, and you want to prevent that, I explained calmly. It seems we're at a bit of an impasse, doesn't it? Except I'm not in a rush, I continued, shrugging nonchalantly. I can just wait until your watch is up and stroll right in. After that, our paths need not cross. Deathstroke's lips twitched into a genuine chuckle. And if they snag Ivy before my time is up? He prodded. I grinned confidently. Simple. With only one exit, I'll just bide my time here and deal with the goon brigade when they show their faces, I countered. And if you're still on duty by then, I'll tail them until you're off the clock. Problem solved. Quite the strategy, kid. Deathstroke mused, his amusement palpable. It doesn't violate the terms of my agreement with the employer either, Have it your way then. Well, since we've got a bit of time to kill, how about a little chat? Let's start with your name, Deathstroke suggested, sheathing his sword and settling onto the ground with an air of nonchalance. His demeanor was almost disarming, but I knew better than to let my guard down. In the DC universe, few could match Batman's level of paranoia and combat prowess, but Deathstroke was certainly in that league. My name's Micah Foster, I responded, keeping my introduction brief. Oh? So you're the one making waves in Gotham lately, right? Deathstroke remarked, giving me an appraising look. Are you one of the Bat Brats? I shrugged in response. I don't know about making waves, but no, I'm not one of Batman's Bat Brats, as you put it, I clarified, amused by the term. Curiosity gleamed in Deathstroke's eye as he leaned in slightly. Then what brings you to Poison Ivy's neck of the woods? Planning to toss her back in Arkham? He quizzed. I shook my head. Nope, I'm not in the Justice for Gotham camp. I'm too lazy to care about the whole vigilante shtick unless someone's killing civilians right in front of my face, I explained. As for my business with Ivy, I don't mind sharing if you're interested. I wasn't exactly on the edge of my seat, but now I'm curious, Deathstroke admitted, his tone laced with intrigue. What's a bat buddy like you doing with Poison Ivy? I flashed him a grin, loving the chance to spill the beans. Ever caught wind of Livewire's viral talk show? I'm the mastermind behind that little sensation, I boasted, giving myself a playful pat on the back. And if you're game, you could be the next big guest star. The mercenary scratched his head, looking genuinely puzzled. My kid mentioned it once or twice, he confessed. But what's Ivy got to do with your talk show? I let out a chuckle, relishing the chance to enlighten him. I came here to ask Ivy to make an appearance. I quipped, gesturing to myself. Heck, if you're interested, we'd be thrilled to have you on the show. Deathstroke pondered the idea, his expression thoughtful. That does sound intriguing, but I don't have time for such trifles, he declined, his tone firm and to the point. Shame, but I've got another proposal if you're interested, I continued, leaning in with a grin. I run a budding pharmaceutical company, and I'm in need of a top-notch security chief. The job's yours if you want it, just name your price. Deathstroke shot me a quizzical look. What kind of company needs a heavy hitter like me to handle their security? Seems like overkill, don't you think? He mused, amusement coloring his tone. Plus, with my current status as a wanted criminal, I'm not in the ideal corporate employee, he added, a hint of wryness in his voice. I let out a sigh at his words. Well, this isn't your average company. We're talking about a place with the secret sauce for a universal cancer cure, I replied, giving him a level stare. And as for your legal standing, who said anything about official employment? We're talking off the books here, I added, raising an eyebrow. Universal cancer cure? Well, you're full of surprises, the mercenary remarked, his interest piqued. Unfortunately, I'm all booked up for the foreseeable future. But I do know someone who might fit the bill for you. I'll arrange a meet-up if you're interested, he offered, his tone businesslike. If it's a recommendation from you, I'm all ears, I replied, nodding in agreement. Just let me know the time and place, and I'll be there. No need for that. She'll find you soon enough, Deathstroke said as he rose to his feet. My shift's up, so I'll take my leave now, so feel free to go wild. But here's a word of advice, kid, tread carefully. The rabbit hole you're diving into goes deeper than you think. I wouldn't jump in blindly if I were you. He cautioned, striding toward the exit without waiting for a response. Chapter 80, Deeper into the Rabbit Hole. Number 80. Stepping into the loft at the apex of the greenhouse, I was greeted by a symphony of chaos, the sounds of a brawl reverberating through the room. Without missing a beat, I swung the door open, only to freeze as a guy stumbled toward me like he'd just had one too many. I grabbed the dude by the shoulder, realizing he was more out cold than ready to rumble. With a shrug, I let him flop to the floor, his landing punctuated by a solid thud. Pushing past him, I entered the room, greeted by another scene straight out of a twisted fairy tale. The loft, much like the rest of the greenhouse, was a lush paradise of greenery. And there, in the midst of it all, sat Poison Ivy with all her iconic green charm and seductive figure, nursing her injured shoulder with a grimace that said, well, this isn't ideal. Surrounding her, a gang of goons brandished swords coated in some funky purple goo, waging a fierce battle against dozens of tendrils and vines surrounding poison ivy. Each time their weapons made contact with ivy's vines, the tendrils would shrivel and die, only for one more vine to pop out of the ground to replace it. Looks like these fellows came prepared. It seemed that the two parties were at a standstill, but judging by Ivy's expression, it was clear that these people were pushing her to her absolute limits. "Quite the tussle you got here," I quipped, making my presence known as I eyed the scene before me. "Need a hand, or should I just stand here and enjoy the show?" I said, turning my gaze to Poison Ivy. The commotion came to an abrupt halt as all eyes turned towards me, the men wearing expressions that mingled caution with a hint of dread. Poison Ivy, however, greeted me with a disarming smile that could charm the leaves of a tree. "If you've got the heart to watch a bunch of tough guys picking on a damsel in distress," she began, her demeanor oozing vulnerability that could have fooled anyone not in the know. "Then feel free to stick around and enjoy the show," she added, batting her eyelashes innocently. "Damsel in distress? You?" I couldn't help but chuckle, shaking my head in disbelief. "Nice try, but I'm not buying it. Though you do seem to be struggling," I remarked, casting a sidelong glance at the thugs closing in around us. "As a man, it's my solemn duty to prove that chivalry isn't quite dead yet," I quipped, pointing a finger at the nearest goon. With a flick of my wrist, a beam of light shot forth, piercing through his shoulder like a hot knife through butter. He crumpled to the ground, howling in pain. The other four thugs exchanged nervous glances before scattering in different directions, each hoping to make a run for it. After my experience with their friends outside, I'd expected these guys to fight to the death, so their actions were a bit surprising. I couldn't help but wonder if their positions were higher than the ones outside, but it didn't really matter. I wasn't about to let them off the hook that easily. My Scooby-Doo senses were tingling and telling me there was something interesting going on, and I'd be damned if I didn't get to the bottom of it. "Did I say you can leave?" I demanded, calling upon my shadow control powers. The shadows surged to life, enveloping the fleeing thugs in their inky embrace until only their noses poked out, leaving them squirming like a bunch of caterpillars. Before they could even start struggling, vines emerged from the ground, shredding through my shadow bindings and impaling the thugs, ending their resistance before it could even begin. It didn't take a detective to figure out they were now very much deceased. I turned to Poison Ivy with a quizzical expression. "Well, that was rather direct," I remarked, shaking my head in disbelief. "They could have spilled the beans on who sent them if you hadn't, turned them into plant food," I added, crossing my arms in mild frustration. "There's no need for interrogation. I already know who these people are and who sent them," Poison Ivy stated firmly, her gaze fixed on the fallen men. "They minions of the League of Assassins." Poison Ivy's words caught me off guard. "League of Assassins? Are you having some kind of turf war as fellow eco-terrorists or something?" I quipped, arching an eyebrow in curiosity. Poison Ivy regarded me with a knowing look. "I've never seen eye to eye with the demon head, but this goes beyond our personal disagreements," she explained cryptically. "Let's just say I declined an invitation to a rather exclusive club, and the demon head, being a member, didn't take it lightly," she added, her tone tinged with a hint of mystery. "An exclusive club of villains?" The thought made me chuckle. "Is it the secret society? Or maybe the Legion of Doom?" I inquired, raising an eyebrow with a smirk. It made total sense, in that twisted, comic book villain kind of way. I mean, who in their right mind would shell out the big bucks for Deathstroke just to play glorified bodyguard? And let's be real, Deathstroke wouldn't stoop to babysitting duty even if you paid him in solid gold. Now, this secret society of villains? It's like a recurring nightmare in the DC universe, starring all the big bads you'd rather not meet in a dark alley. We're talking Lex Luthor, Vandal Savage, and Gorilla Grodd. These guys aren't just brawlers, they're masterminds with more resources than a billionaire playboy on a bender. But here's the kicker, they're about as united as a bag of cats in a room full of rocking chairs. They only team up when they've got some epic scheme brewing or when they're scared the Justice League might crash their party. And when it's all said and done, they scatter like roaches when you turn on the lights. What's more, there's zero camaraderie among these villains. It's more like a game of King of the Hill, where the big shots use the smaller fries as cannon fodder in their never-ending power struggles. No wonder Ivy's giving that mess a wide berth. Poison Ivy shot me a skeptical glance as she strolled toward me, her green eyes shimmering with curiosity. "You're pretty well informed for a guy who popped up out of the blue," she remarked, her tone a mix of suspicion and intrigue. Harley and one other friend mentioned you once or twice, said you had a certain charm, she added, flashing a coy smile that seemed to carry a hint of floral fragrance with it. I instinctively raised a hand to keep her at bay. Hold your horses, devil woman. I know all about your pheromones, and I've come prepared. I declared, wrapping myself in a protective cloak of shadows. Ahem, normally I'd be more than happy to be charmed by a pretty lady like you, but I'm here on business, I explained, trying to keep my cool despite the tantalizing scent in the air. Poison Ivy arched an eyebrow, a hint of amusement dancing in her eyes. Well, well. Harley wasn't pulling my ivy chain after all. You really are something, she said with a chuckle, the sweet fragrance fading away into the breeze. So, spill the beans. What brings you to my humble abode, handsome? She leaned in, her gaze piercing. Well, it's like this.
Thanks for listening.